I basically just spent like a couple months just doing like an outline of like, oh, I wonder if I could write it as a feature or maybe as like a series, and it ended up being like a 60-page single spaced treatment, and I ended up writing like over 300 pages. So it does exist as a series. I haven't like sat down and read it all yet, but this absolutely sounds tonally like, hopefully, the grace of God, Lost Treasure the series. If we all go back to normal, or it'll be animation, or nothing. We'll just play Pong for the rest of our lives. We'll just watch old movies, which is fine with me. I love the VHS hour, so yeah.
As long as I get to host them, I guess that's my life now.
100%, yeah.
I've come to agree with this.
You're very good at it, yeah.
I normally start recording around in my intro, but I thought we were talking some good stuff here, so I thought I just.
Oh yeah. Well, you can save it for future reference. Well, so yeah, that's cool.
It's interesting, this balance that's here. By the way, everybody, hi everyone. I'm Benji Carver, coming to you live in the Warp Dimension with the one and only. You will know his name hopefully sooner than later. Robert. Is it Husted or Husted?
Husted, but you're super close. And there isn't a single person on Earth or in another galaxy that has gotten it right yet. So yeah, Husted. It's like Houston with a D. So yeah.
The thing is, if you said Houston, and like how Houston is in New York, but it's totally Houston, I would have caught that, but you don't have a O in your name.
I should have spelled it that way. I used to see a lot of good movies there. There was a Landmark Theater there. They used to show a lot of good stuff. Now it's closed.
Yeah, actually, one of my managers worked at that one, and I actually was going to be hired by them long time ago when I was out there for a summer waiting on a gig to shoot, and they called me a week too late because I had to come back to Los Angeles.
So. Oh man. Well, you know what? You would have had a good time there. I think everything probably worked out the way that it should have, but it was a great theater, man. I remember pulling my friend out of the bathroom after a night of heavy drinking when we saw De Palma's The Untouchables, and he passed out right when Connery gets blown away. I'm like, what are you doing? You're missing the best part, dude. Now
you sound like my podcaster former friend.
Yeah.
I brought over a steak and a whiskey one time and watched Packer and Billy the Kid, and the guy fell asleep 20 minutes in, and I was like, you son of a bitch.
No, you can't do that. You got to sit through Billy. No, was it the director's cut? Was it the longer cut of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid?
It was. Well, it's funny because there's three versions that exist.
That's right. There's like three versions. Yeah.
The one that everyone says, watch the one that's I think 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Yes, that's the good one, right? That's the premiere one.
The studio tried to literally burn that, but it's not the actual director's cut. That's the thing, is everyone keeps saying Peckinpah never had the money to when it was fired from the movie before he had a working print, and then he gave it to one of his biker buddies, was like, hey man, put this in a fridge. And it's great because Z Channel, I don't know if you saw the Z Channel doc, they talk all about that in a supplemental.
I'm dying to watch the doc on that, because I remember when I first saw Heaven's Gate, somebody was like, yeah, the Z Channel is the reason that people actually stopped laughing at Heaven's Gate for like 5 minutes. Like they were like, no, it's a cool movie. You should give it a chance. And I got to see that. Didn't like the Z Channel guy murder somebody? Yeah. Which makes me want to watch it even more, by the way. Like I'm even more excited.
Pretty dark, which is funny because I wonder how Jerry Harvey would handle himself nowadays. I feel like I've always been a mini Jerry Harvey. I mean, he was kind of someone who inspired me to like be there's the Cine family, of course, right?
Oh yes.
And just sort of like there were amazing people that went through there, but it has a darkness there, and that darkness is there. And then there was a guy who kind of looked like Jerry Harvey, who will remain nameless, recording. But I was like, oh my! But the reason why what wanted me to go to LA from the Bay Area was one of the documentaries that I saw him as a teenager was Z Channel. The other was A Decade Under the Influence.
Oh, that's another great one. Yeah, totally.
And I was like, cool, like this is what you do in LA, right? Like you go to UCLA, you break up with your longtime girlfriend, you get another girlfriend who then you break up with, and then he like submits yourself to as a film goer in these audiences where you see real filmmakers and real people that you remember seeing in the theater. And it became very surreal for a while. Like one of my first times ever helping out of the Cine family, the volunteers thing. You get to meet Bruce Dern and Seymour Cassell. And then Ben Gazzara is there next week with Gary Oldman, and you're like, where am I made the right decision, right?
That's amazing. You know what the sad part is? I only got to see one movie there, but it was one of the best movies I've ever seen in a theater. It was California Split, and it was like a perfect print and looked amazing. And nobody from Altman's crew was there, sadly, but it was amazing. It was such a bummer that the what a witch's coven that place turned out to be. But
Well,
you know,
it's weird, but the history of that place is so dark, man. Like, there's been murders that have happened there. Like,
I've heard.
it's and and interesting enough, like our guest programmer this week, Brett Berg, he used to be one of the programmers at Cine Family and was one of the real good people there that was bringing you all the great material. And then he was like, a few years before it shut down, he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm out. Like, I'm done with that place. And he's just like, that place is just a hole. Like, there's just something there that, a lot of amazing things happen, but also a lot of dark shit just happens there. And like the Jerry Harvey story, it's like, yeah, I don't want to ruin anything about Z Channel for you. Like, you, as we've gotten to know each other in these 2 times now, and through I think we have a lot of the same taste in movies and stuff like that. So,
definitely.
Which is nice because I normally don't even say taste because I feel like you're excluding stuff because I don't. This is something I felt with my podcaster guy. He always wanted to do only movies he liked. And he didn't want to do movies that were like different or he hadn't seen before. Like, come on, dude.
The part that ruins the discovery process. It's like you gotta keep the antenna open to new frequencies.
He just was against it. I don't know, and that's probably why he ran home to San Diego. But like.
He ran home.
He literally did. That's what I just
like he jogged home.
Didn't get out. But with Cine Family, Z Channel, like there's a lot of this, like definitely material. But it's like Jerry Harvey was really strong friends with Sam Peckinpah, Altman, all these things, and definitely, and then being a part of that, we probably were in the same theater at times. We just didn't know each other at
yeah, well, I think you probably got to frequent it much more than me. I did get to go back when, I think they reopened as the Fairfax Cinema. Like, really?
Oh, you went back for that one month or so that was open? Like,
I did. I was lucky. It's funny because Lost Treasure was actually playing in a festival that day, and it was at which one was it? It was one of those ones that wasn't named as fun as your awesome festival. It was like the LA filmmakers, but somehow they got the region.
Holly Shorts Festival. Yeah.
Oh, I wish. Are you kidding? That would have been a freaking honor. It was at some downtown LA theater, but it was one of those ones where it's like they had a party at night, but you had to pay like $100 to get. I'm like, I'm one of the filmmakers. So Fairfax Cinema was playing Something Wild that night, and I was like, I'm going to see Something Wild. I'm not gonna bother with this. So and no regrets. It was awesome. There was like 20 people in there, and I'm like, Something Wild on 35. This is perfect.
Something totally Wild is a pipe dream of mine is when if I ever got into like an argument with like a studio suit or something and be like, your tone shift has changed, or what genre, what movie are you making here? And I just turn that one on and it's like, see this? Directed by Jonathan Demme. This movie you think is a romantic comedy. It is not a romantic comedy halfway through because Ray Liotta shows up and it becomes an erotic thriller.
Yeah, it's like, wow, things get dark real fast. It's like, this is like a fun road movie, and then it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Or it's like, yeah. This was I read a really good analysis of that movie once, which basically said like, yeah, you can have crazy Melanie Griffith in that movie, but you're gonna have to take the ride all the way, and it might involve crazy Ray Liotta in his debut breakout performance. It might happen. Stuff might go. Wild stuff might happen. Yeah. Something wild.
Yeah, not Hubie Halloween Ray Liotta, as we've all seen. That clown hat on.
I was going to say my day gig is it's localization for Netflix. So that was not the main trailer, but it's like the 30-second version of that. I remember there was like some late night and somebody was like, we got to get this debuts tomorrow. We got to get the English subs out. And I was like, what is Hubie Halloween? I looked at it and I was like, man, Sandler, he's still going. He's still going. I love the early Sandler. I have no issues with or Punch Drunk, but I have not seen any of the later multi-film Sandler deals films, so I can't even comment on that. But I'm very curious. I haven't seen the Western that he did, or any of his other more recent.
The Western fails on many levels, and also as an American Indian Studies major at San Francisco State. I should probably say it's a horrible film. We should never have anything like this. I actually think it works at times. The only problem is that he casts himself in red face as a native.
Oh, that's problematic. That's very problematic.
So, but then Taylor Lautner is also in it, playing an Adam Sandler character. Like he's kind of not quite, high IQ or what scale you're, spectrum you're on. He's actually really good, and you're like, wait, why didn't he just get Taylor Lautner to play this character, and he plays that character? Like, was there a deal that Netflix made with him, or just like, because it doesn't make sense why he's the lead in that one? Weirdly enough,
interesting. And is it like a Blazing Saddles? Like, is it like a parody of Blazing
Saddles? Okay. But it gets pretty bad because it's all these, all the red face, all these bad, Indian native names and stuff like that. It's like. So, there's a reason why people walked off the set.
Yes, that's right. There were extras that walked off the set, I read. Yeah,
Constance is actually pretty good because what it is Nick Nolte is this fucking horn dog who slept with all these people from everywhere. Like, he was just, he's the gold miner guy in Buster Scruggs. He's Tom Waits' he's this total degenerate who slept with every woman under the sun. And that's where the ridiculous six come from, is all six of his kids, and they come together. They don't know each other, and then they go find their dad, and their dad's just a degenerate who tries to kill him in the end, kind of thing. So, there actually is not a bad script. The core of it.
I mean, you kind of had me at crazy Nick Nolte. I was like, I might have to flip past this and just get. Well, I heard the Spy one was better.
1.5 stream. 1.5. And he'll be good.
Well, what about, wasn't there one, it's like him and Spade, the do-over. So there was one where they're mistaken identity. I heard that one was it was a level up from Ridiculous.
It's also R. That one's an R one.
So they could,
which is, well, they still have moments. He just is into this weird thing where it's he throws everything at the screen and sees what sticks, which is always a Sandler formula, but it's to a point where it's always about someone just randomly ripping ass to someone's balls. I literally sweating when someone hits them. It's you get these moments that's pretty funny, and then it's and then there's this extra beat. They're just really, and I'm like, come on, man, and it's just sort of it lets the air out of the room where it's that was funny. Oh.
See, you're making me think of something interesting. It's making me think that the ideal Adam Sandler director, aside from P.T. Anderson, might have been Hal Ashby. Because I was reading about the way that Hal Ashby shot the end of Coming Home, or when John Voight's giving the speech in the high school and stuff, about how, he just let John Voight just prattle on for forever. And I guess Haskell Wexler's son was doing the sound, and he was just that some of that's kind of embarrassing. Does Hal really? And he's Hal knows what he's doing. He's shaping this whole. He's just letting him go. I'm maybe there was a being there in the universe type of thing that Sandler could have been in if Ashby had been preserved and cyborgized and made available to us as he should have been.
Ashby, it's great that you bring that up. I have a kinship to him because we both grew up in Mormon households, and
very cool. Interesting.
And we both left the church around the same age and stuff like that. He was married and left. I went on a mission, and then I was no, I'm cool.
Bye.
Well, it's the story everyone tells me. You should tell your story. Because I didn't do anything other than I just said, I'm done, kind of thing. And I still stayed active in the church for another year. And I was I'm not done with the church. I'm just done with my mission.
There wasn't an inciting incident, but you're just I think I'm going to ramp this down. I think I
think it's just, I just came of age in some level. I still feel I'm still 15, but, it's sort of thing. But I feel that it's definitely that coming of age story where it's oh yeah, so this is what I was told to do. And then I did it, and now I'm doing it. And then it's this is not what I want to do.
You basically lived Orgasmo. You were just oh no, that was Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day.
No, it's literally
It is okay.
Sorry, right. They're not the Mormons anymore, or never were. They are the Church of Jesus Christ. They're Latter-day Saints. which weirdly enough, I was watching the Brigham Young Frontiersman old classic Henry Hathaway film the other day.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Joseph Smith.
I've always heard that's a good one. That I've not seen enough Henry Hathaway film. Did he do it? He did a James Dean movie, right? Am I crazy, or was that maybe?
No,
Maybe
that's
he
for
did.
Stevens. I think you're thinking of.
I'm thinking of Stevens. Hathaway. That might have been Hopper. There was somebody from. Anyway, I heard that the Brigham Young movie.
I love this conversation, Robert. This is something that I was really excited for when you showed up in the on our opening night, and I was like, okay, you made a great Big Trouble in Little China short film.
Thank you.
And it's woke and it's all these things, and it's not just a nostalgia fest where he like hates women, and so,
that's a different movie. Yeah,
that's the film he made in college. So it's just like, but your taste when you mentioned this, it's like the litmus test. Like you mentioned this movie that I never heard about, and I was like, wait, what? Like you're talking about Loose Shoes? What? Like no. I'm like whoa. Like, and so you're speaking that language of like no one talks about this, like
the cult movie language, man. Yeah, it's
I ran the cult section at Amoeba for 3 years, so like I've never heard of this movie.
But I always felt like like that's what's so great about cult movie fans. It's like we're all like kind of like how the villain in Inner Space, Vernon Wells, how he had that hand that he could unscrew with the blowtorch. We're like that, except we have like half of a puzzle piece on each of our hands, and we meet other cult fans. And like, I mean, that's how I felt when I met somebody that told me about El Topo. I was like, what the fuck is this shit? And they're just like, you want to watch a Japanese bootleg of El Topo where certain things are blurred out because of cultural reasons? And I was like, I'd love to watch this. And then it was like, whoa. And
Japanese blur out penises anywhere you go.
They don't like the pubes. They're just like, we gotta get rid of the pubes, And then and then somebody was like, you gotta check out this movie called Christiane F about a German heroin addict. And it's like, yeah, cool. I'm glad I met that person because I never would have heard of that, but I don't know. I think you would have eventually found the few references that I made or that one reference. I think you were literally like an inch away from it with Loose Shoes. Like you would have eventually found it. Like I think.
Well, Loose Shoes is funny because our other podcast co-host, who was really our sound engineer and did the music for it, he's a huge fan of Loose Shoes. Like he's the kind of guy that would maybe even known of it actually, but unfortunately we lost him too because that's his best friend. So
many people have gone down in the history of another. It's so great. I love it. It's like
this is not Homehead at all. This is just this podcast that was totally.
This podcast has a high body count. It's great.
I quit the movies in 2017. The election like killed me when I was like, I don't know. Like I spent all this money on making my shorts, doing the festival runs. LA is not what it is, and I walked right out before Me Too and Time's Up and COVID and everything. Got drunk went down to Mexico, got drunk, and came back, got a girlfriend. You're back.
You had like a lost weekend in Mexico.
Long story short, it's again, I am Jake from Jake Lost Valley. Sure it's about it. So, anyway, long story short, literally this podcast that started, I was so aversive to podcasts. Like for years, people were like, you should do one. I'm like, no, like I want to make a feature film. And then I'll do a podcast because I'm actually someone who has some merit.
You're just, but with like, I mean, like Bret Easton Ellis has a podcast. It's like it's become the new canvas for anybody that has awesome ideas.
And it seems like I don't agree, and he loves not agreeing with people. That's he gets high off that.
Right.
And he does it just to be a contrarian.
He's a contrarian.
The greatest literary mind, living minds, still to this day. Like I read
for sure.
Hero. I still read it. Like it's like
I'll take it further. I still watch it. I love the book and I watch the movie religiously. And the movie is a Don't Say No to Drugs Nancy Reagan version of that book. But God, if it's not beautiful, holy God, that movie's amazing looking. It's so good.
That's another one I need to go get the VHS for and show.
Oh, that would be prime cut.
No, you're absolutely right. But the thing is, he has merit, whether or not if he's really a secret Trump supporter or not.
I think he's got to be nuts. I mean, he's clearly like completely crazy, but fascinating, like just to listen to.
But that's the thing I identify though, and also with Brett, and also him and his bisexuality and stuff like that. It's just sort of like, it's like, here is someone that is like, we don't have this character anymore, who's still like these burrows with a page with a checkbook kind of person.
Yeah,
like,
totally a wild card. Yeah,
and so it's like to me like that. But anyways, it's like podcast to me was, here's the thing, and it's totally like, I'm being contrarian even here. It's filled with a bunch of people. Most people who do it have never made a movie in their life, or they did one short film, or they worked at a film studio, or they PA'd, and that's it. And then they got pissed, or they went home, or they just watched a lot of movies, which is great. And I feel like we're like probably 20 minutes in here, so I can talk about this. I always feel like when I'm doing it, I'd be like, okay, so I'm not speaking the language of filmmakers anymore. I'm just speaking to audiences who like movies.
Sure.
So how do I not get so geeky, or how do I get geek but not get geek? And then my managers at Whole Foods were like, hey, you like movies? We like movies too. We've actually made some movies. They aren't very good.
Wait, you're telling me that you're telling me that your managers at Whole Foods are not like, because wouldn't that be cool if they were? You're just like, oh my God, I've discovered the next.
They were musicians. They were, and the guy who was doing our sound engineering and whatnot, very talented dude, like bassist, like went to school, was actually, I found out, like worked for Universal, was doing. He's one of those people who does all this hard work but never gets paid for, and you're like, dude, you need to get paid for this kind of thing.
That's sad, yeah.
And so he's like the guy you want on your side, and so. Yeah. And they were just like, hey, let's just sit down and watch a movie. Like, what do you guys want to talk about with movies? Like, what's their format? What is this if you really want to go commit to this? Because you have the microphones and everything. So I was just like, okay, let's just fucking do it. I'm in school again. This will be my...
You're like, I've rationalized sitting down and I can do it now. I can do it now. We'll just do it. And then it turned out to be awesome, right?
I did. I quit in 2017. I tried to come back at one point in 2018 to do a short that was... weirdly enough, maybe because of I felt like we did what we could, and then all of a sudden it was that snowball of where it crashed and burned like right in front of me, and then had like my friends and family that helped me out be like, actually you should have told this story, and I'm like, no, you're right. But no, they're absolutely right. It's one of those like classic, like if the movie you're making isn't as good as what's becoming behind the scenes, then of course you're making the wrong movie kind of thing.
I would like to see a behind the scenes of this. I mean, I'd like to see the movie, but I'd like to also see a supplement. I mean, I don't know. You could have like a Herzog thing going on where it's like you have your Fitzcarraldo and you also have the amazing behind the scenes drama behind it, So
yeah, well, I actually think the short script is pretty good, and it was supposed to be like a little bit more of a, hey, let's shoot this as one short, as a team build, get me back in with, I have a producer now, a person who actually produced a feature, cool, like kind of thing, and just all of a sudden, like just, and I had a little bit of money that I got in from a settlement, working for one of these gig apps, that.
Oh wow!
And nice. So I was like, cool, like I guess I'm gonna do it, and then it just literally with a burning tire down the streets of Newhall. Like,
oh no! Did you film any of it, or it just did like you did, and you're just not crazy with how it came out, or like did you like how far did you get with it?
So it was interesting because we I wanted everything to be and to save time from dressings and stuff. I wanted to shoot it in one day, mostly the Osmo, the DGL Osmo, the one angle.
Yes, yeah. For sure.
A lot and song to song.
Yeah.
Didn't know about that technology until I was doing the last minute, like we were doing the production, and then someone said, hey, I have this camera. I was like, this is the camera. Like we were gonna do just like standard work. I was like, no, it's one angle, it's motion censored capture. It's literally, it's a steady cam, but in my hand.
Yeah.
But we had a real sound person, things like that. But long story short, we shot all the exteriors in Newhall. It's essentially a very simple story, and it's non-genre even. It was just
that's okay. Yeah.
Single mom goes home, That's why I'm pitching you this idea now.
No, I'm into this. I'm into this idea. Yeah, please.
It's about you, Robert. This show's supposed to be about you.
Nobody cares about me. It's all bullshit. Just no, but I like your yeah. So this was Newhall. This was near like Lancaster and stuff.
Yeah. So this was in the Antelope Valley. Have you been to Newhall? It's a little western town. Like it's
beautiful.
It's literally the town I grew up in Morgan Hill. And my friend was always like, you should shoot here. You should shoot here. And I helped him out here and there on his stuff. And then he's like, hey, how was so-and-so? Cool. Like he never could like afford to pay me kind of guy, or he was always like,
we all have one of those.
If you really want me to show up, you got to give me something like compensation. Like I'm not going to go up to Lancaster and like help you shoot your movie. Like
nobody goes to Lancaster unless they're being paid, or we paid people to go to Lancaster. But no, Newhall it's beautiful. Yeah, it's like a movie set. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
And it's like this weird like Santa Clara County, Santa Clarita, and like Valencia. Like hate it because it's like, oh, it's where all the degenerates are, where all the people they call all these conservative white people that call like immigrants live there and stuff. And it's like I love it. It's like this like western town that like I grew up in, like here in the South Bay. So I was like, okay, this is the perfect place. We got a real actress who was excited to be in it because she wasn't playing a crazy chick.
Nice.
And so Kansas Bowling was her name. You might have heard of her. She was with
she does trauma stuff, right?
She did trauma stuff. She doesn't do it anymore. I don't know what the story is going on. But her first feature was like she was 16 and she shot her first feature and stuff like that.
I followed her Instagram for a little bit. Yeah, she seems like a very interesting character. Yeah, for sure. Like
so we were able to like she worked on my buddy's thing. She came on. She was a total pro. I just felt like to me I was just like wiping the egg off my face the whole time, and I was just sort of like. And then like I literally fired the producer who wasn't even there because she had a family emergency last minute and brought on another producer. And I was just like, okay, whatever. Like I can do this. This is not
like it's kickball. She's pulling in an alternate.
I don't know. But I literally fired the producer who said, well, Kansas yelled at my friend who's the producer came on. And I was like, you're lying. Goodbye. Like kind of moment. Like I was like, I don't care. I'm sorry your grandma died in Canada, but like you're out. Like you weren't even there.
You know what this honestly sounds like? There's another doc I need to share with you. It's actually it's only like 6 minutes or so. Have you ever seen Please Kill Mr. Kinski?
No, but I had a poor PA named Kevin Kinski who worked on a shoot with me.
I feel bad for him already. I mean, please, I want to hear about Kevin Kinski. What was his problem? Was he related to Klaus Kinski at all? Or?
No, his sister, I guess, was the production manager for a show, and he had just gotten back, like broken up with his girlfriend in Berlin, and was like, "Oh, I need a job." And clearly, he wanted to get further in the industry, so he just worked his ass off, and he had some connections. But I think he now works as a location manager or something. But I just remember sitting there. Nice. I was transpo for this shoot. Like I don't even know how I got on this shoot. It was just one of those like, "Hey, my friend drives a car. We'll give him a pass van."
That's cool. So you actually had like a manageable job like on a shoot, which is so rare. It's like here's something to do that's not completely crazy. Just like just work with transpo. Like
I thought
or no, what was it crazy?
So it's funny, but poor Kevin Kinski, I would just see him doing everything, and then all these other PAs around were all TV PAs. They were off in the summer. So they were used to only doing like one thing and sitting around and doing nothing. And he was this guy who'd never worked on a show before. And so I'm sitting in the van just like propped up like, this guy works hard. I want this guy to produce my movie. But he wasn't the guy who produced that with me, but he just mentioned. Yeah, and this guy, it was like July. This dude was like dripping in sweat the whole time. It was just like he just looked like he was about to like pass out, and he wasn't like young. Like he was like a couple years older than I was at the time. So
like it's not cute anymore. Well, so the Please Mr. really briefly the Please Mr. Kinski thing. So you've seen some of the footage of Klaus Kinski screaming that he's going to kill Werner Herzog. I'm assuming
I have a copy of Kinski Uncut upstairs. So
okay, well this is a great supplement. It's for free on YouTube. It's only like 6 minutes. He was in a movie. It was an Empire Charles Band picture, Empire Trancers, Terror Vision, the great Charles Band. He was in a movie that I haven't seen called Crawl Space, where he plays like Have you seen Crawl Space? I have not seen it.
A friend of another amoeba coworker of mine, that's one of his favorites. He's a big fan of like Dark Backwards and Terrence.
Oh, that was a great trailer that I still have not seen the movie of. That was a wonderful trailer, though.
He got me into those ones. I haven't seen that one. I saw Venom, but that one's been on my list for a while.
Oh yes, Venom has absolutely been, and I think that was Kinski also. I believe that was okay.
Kinski and Oliver Reed. So,
which makes perfect sense. Why would they not be in the same movie? So please, Mr. Kinski, it's a 6-minute documentary made by the director of Crawl Space. He made it in like '95, so it's kind of nostalgic to watch. It's like shot on SD video. He's a film professor now, so he just filmed it in his college, and he basically shows behind the scenes footage and talks about how shooting with Klaus Kinski was just horrific on Crawl Space, and how everybody on the crew kept coming up to him by the end of it and just saying, please kill Mr. Kinski. Just kill him. Like literally just kill him. And the producer was like, I could just get rid of him. Like we could just kill him. And it's fun. It's a good 6-minute escape from the nightmare of our current freaking Fulci sci-fi New Gladiators existence right now. So,
well, I was gonna say, I guess QAnon hasn't been hip to who Klaus Kinski is because they would love him. See, there's a guy in the industry. He definitely he's got a like this guy, and it's in his book too. Like it's one reason why I've never finished it. I was like, I don't know, do I want to read about what I know it's gonna be in that book? Because he was unabashedly a fucking pederast, like.
And his daughter, and it's funny. I never put it together that Nastasia was his daughter, and I think she was the one that blew the whistle.
Well,
I think
he never had a thing for her. Polanski did, but that's another story.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, was it the other daughter that?
It was the other daughter. He that. But then it's like, quote unquote, and Natasha, who. My 80s dream girl, like she is the Asia Argento of the 80s to me, like
cat people. Yeah.
Cat people. But I'm talking about One from the Heart. I'm talking about Paris, Texas. I'm like,
yeah. How can I neglect those?
True. But cat people. But yeah. But the thing is, it's so.
Can I share some completely unrelated anecdote that I have to share on here, if nowhere else but here? Okay, so, and I only thought of this because when we were just talking about cat people for 2 seconds, it made me remember that. So you've probably seen Rolling Thunder, I'm assuming, or it's on, the William Devane, Paul Schrader revenge Vietnam film, where he, the trailer has him sharpening his hook that he now has from having his arm shoved into a garbage disposal. Great movie, great revenge. Just, a litany of Paul Schrader scripts that he just sold and got made, and it is what it is. It's a super fun movie. I got a hold of the original script, which is not hard to find. I mean, you can just Google it. The original draft before it was rewritten by a friend of a friend's dad, Haywood Gold, who wrote Cocktail, The Immortal Cocktail. Supposedly Cocktail's a great novel, by the way, but believe it or not, I've heard. But he did a rewrite on Rolling Thunder, and I think all the romance in Rolling Thunder was this guy, all the love stuff. Anyway, just thought this anecdote would be appreciated. I'm reading Schrader's original script. By the way, he's on Facebook. He's very accessible. He answered a question that I asked him about Light Sleeper. He's like, oh yeah, thanks for watching that. I was like, thanks, Paul Schrader. Reading his original draft of Rolling Thunder, there is a scene. So we think that Marvel was the first connected cinematic universe. There is a connected Schraderverse, and I'll explain why. In the middle of Rolling Thunder, the original draft, is it Charles Rain?
You are on to some good stuff here.
We're ready for this. I'm gonna blow your mind. It's in the script. Charles Rain, probably right before he goes and blows everybody away, he goes to a drive-in, because it takes place in Texas. In the script, it explicitly says, it's like he pulls up next to a familiar face. It's Travis Bickle. They look at each other. They are the same. I'm not kidding. I'm paraphrasing. There's a connected Paul Schrader universe, which means there's a baby Richard Gere in that script probably somewhere who becomes American Gigolo. Cat people exist in the same universe as Taxi Driver. It's possible. We have to exploit this somehow. How do we exploit the connected Schraderverse? The Yakuza.
I think Dog Eat Dog also exists in this world as well.
I hope it does. The movie's amazing.
I just interviewed the guys. I don't know if you saw Look Twice. They were on, I think, the night after you.
No, you know what's funny? So, a friend of mine who was watching all the movie, he's like, Look Twice was freaking cool. He's like, you should have seen Look Twice, and that was one that I missed. I'm an idiot.
They're Cleveland guys. I was gonna, and we got side. There's just so much stuff you end up in the conversation going to. I was gonna ask.
We're good at sidetracking.
Schrader shot that in Cleveland, and he shot it with, or it could be Columbus. I get my C's, or Cincinnati. I get my C's mixed up in Ohio. So it's like, and I've been to Ohio. I've never been to any of the 3 C's. I've been through Columbus, never stopped. I hung out in Dayton, and I hung out in Yellow Springs. And so
Yellow Spring. What about Akron, the home of Devo? Did you ever know?
Akron. Don't know my Midwest, so I have nothing to relate to 50% of this country in general. And so, but no, it was just like, because Schrader, so getting into the Schrader, I was just doing the prayer hands is like, this is totally true. Because I actually think, and I think it on a level is that Taxi Driver, which I'm called Rolling Thunder, Hardcore, and American Gigolo.
Still never seen Hardcore. Have to see it, but please continue. I don't want to interrupt your stream of consciousness.
I know. So those 4 films, I actually never saw American Gigolo until I was living in Europe in my early 20s.
What an interesting way to see it. Just go to Europe and see American Gigolo.
Vienna, the Vienna Institute, or the Austrian Film Institute, is fascinating. No one talks to each other. Michael Haneke always does some guest speaking.
Of course, he probably has like a permanent room there. Yeah, right.
They have this amazing 35 millimeter screening room where they get these prints, and they showed. I've seen like RoboCop there. I've seen Rosemary's Baby there.
That's awesome.
And I saw American Gigolo one summer there because they were doing American cinema. They did like Paris, Texas. I missed that right before I was there. I saw Husbands. I saw Husbands on my birthday there. Like I was
35. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Killing a Chinese bookie there. I mean,
wow, like, that's insane. Did you see Gloria there? They showed Gloria. I was just telling somebody, I'm like, you got to see Gloria, man. It's his studio picture, but it's amazing. It's
studio picture. I actually think Husbands was supposed to be a studio movie, and then they're like, what? Like we saw a shot, we saw faces. We like this. We want that new Hollywood look. What is this? Like,
I think the funny part about Cassavetes is the only studio picture. It feels like the only true studio picture he ever did was The Fury, where he gets blown up from 19 different angles at the end. Like that's the closest thing to a studio picture that he's done.
Have you seen Machine Gun McCain?
No, and my buddy who is somehow connected to one of the stories I was telling, he's like that, and he's a huge Killing of a Chinese Bookie fan. As am I. He see those 2. Is
he an LA friend, or is he like from hometown?
He's well. It's funny. We grew up together. He is an LA friend, but he was the first person who introduced me to Laserdiscs. Okay. So I didn't have a player, but he was the one that was like, yeah, man, we should watch this movie, Chinese Ghost Story. It's on this thing.
Did you mention this person? I was like, do I know this person? Because we are separated by 2 or 3 degrees, probably.
You may. His name's Chris LaRusso. He's a studio editor, so our union editor. But we all grew up in Connecticut. But if the 3 of us had grown up in the same town, we would have all been friends. So I'm sure at some point you'll Kevin Bacon into him.
Well, the thing is, that's what I've been having, especially doing this festival, is that there's always someone that knows. Like literally, it's just, oh yeah, like you were at Cinefamily when I was at Cinefamily, or oh, you know so and so. Yeah, I know so and so. Like, and it's also been my life where it's like, I took a Craigslist car share ride from LA to the Bay once for a wedding. And the only person, I needed money for gas. The only person that answered it was some random dude in Silver Lake. I pick him up and we're just talking. He was like, oh, what are you? He's like, oh, I'm a sound editor. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to be a filmmaker. I've just mostly done production, production assistant. He's like, oh yeah, well, have you done anything? I was like, oh, I did this thing called Narco Corrido. It's like an AFI short that won some awards. I was at the time. He's like, oh yeah, I was a sound editor on that. I'm like, what?
Wow, that's crazy.
And then he like sound edited like other movies because it's all the same group of people, and so your buddy probably knows some of these people from there or from other spots. So it's like,
honestly, I bet if the 3 of us got together, which I'm sure we will at some point, like, yeah, they're probably. But it's funny because it seems like back when you were only shooting on film to make movies, it was the same type of closeness with the indie filmmakers, except it was so much smaller. It was so much smaller that the chances of every one of those people being incredible just increased exponentially. I was lucky enough. I just randomly sent him a Facebook request. The director of Miracle Mile, and I'm such an idiot. I'm blanking on his name. Steve Desjardins. He's like
he went away, like, and he made it a brilliant film, a brilliant movie. I think
he made a brilliant movie, and I talked to him on Facebook a little bit, and he just started talking about how, in 19, I guess it was 80 or 81, he opened his short film. He sent me expired, but he sent me a link to his first short film, which is incredible. It's an AFI. It's a noir. It looks like it was shot in the 40s. I forget what it's called. I think he's going to release it publicly soon, but he opened at I think it was called the FilmX screen, one of these cool LA like distributor screens.
Before LA Film Fest, it was called FilmX.
See, exactly. So you would get along with this guy too. I mean, I barely talked to the guy, but I think he's somebody that we all would have been friends. He was saying that he opened for Martin Brest's first movie. Mr. Beverly Hills.
Go back, Martin Brest. And I'm just kidding. It's not Martin Brest.
So that's the thing. There's so many different degrees of Martin Brest. There's Midnight Runs, Martin Brest, which is probably my favorite Martin Brest. Then there's Fired from War Games, Martin Brest. But he's like, no, Martin Brest. He like made this. He made an hour-and-a-half feature called Hot Tomorrows, which is a really cool title. It's one of the only movies that has a concert performance from, besides Forbidden Zone, that had Oingo Boingo back when they were Mystic Knights of the Oingo.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, I just opened for his film, and I'm like, you guys were just buddies. You're just buddies, just hanging out. Yeah, just these freaking geniuses just hanging out. It was it was a different era. But yeah, same thing today. We're just as cool, if not more cool than those guys.
Well, now we're all just in each other's living rooms in the warp dimension. I mean,
that's true. It's like nice blinds, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's funny. I'm doing some construction work on the warp dimension, so I thought I'd put up our AITH poster.
I love the The poster is. Where do we get the poster? Do you guys sell the poster?
It is coming soon. George is putting shirts and hats together.
That's awesome. I can't wait.
Killer Bob, killerbob.com, one of our longtime festival goers here and his friends, tattoo artist. He's created the last couple years of work. You should, if you look it up, like the past stuff, like unicorns that have the transatlantic building like as horns, and they're like zombie unicorns, to last year was like a big Cthulhu, like film Cthulhu. Like,
wow. No, I all the key art that you guys have is completely sick. It feels
the Mr. Wholehead's warp dimension spider in the
That's awesome. Well, whatever's behind you is super cool. I definitely want that.
They combined Wonder Woman 3, the new Wonder Woman movie, with Return of the Living Dead Part 3. That's what they gave.
That's real.
It will be the one, I guess I'll announce here, is that if my tattoo shop is open in Los Angeles, I am getting that on the back of my leg, this tattoo. So
that's awesome. Okay, so you would fit in with my editor buddy, who has a tattoo that he half regrets but still likes, of the Guyver that he got in high school on his lower leg.
Mark Hamill's the Guyver, or the
This was the anime Guyver, so it wasn't like. Although I will say, I was having a complete side note again. I was having a conversation with my buddy who did. He sort of did like the last round of VFX on Lost Treasure, and like sort of like did all the finishing work. We were talking about how, even when they were shooting 35 for these direct-to-video movies, like I remember I was watching Guyver 2 Dark Hero, and I was like, man, Guyver 2 Dark Hero, like this is so freaking stupid but awesome, and it's like they just picked like the Ektachrome of 35 millimeter stock, and it looks so good. Like, I am not an anti-digital person at all, but there's just something, I don't know, it was a different era of like, even the crappiest, lowest budget direct-to-video thing, they would throw in some money to shoot on 35. They would, they would go for it.
Yeah,
it's a bygone era.
It's interesting to see that where it's at, and then of course they'd shoot on 35, and then they would put this stuff onto VHS tape,
right?
But tape to tape,
right?
And then, so they spent all this money to make it look like there's a print out there of like the Renegade movie that is beautiful. It's shot on 16. But
wait, the Lorenzo Lamas Renegade movie? There's a movie that was made from Renegade. I gotta say, that's amazing.
So I know. Usually, what I do is I just grab from the library in the Warp Dimension because I also, after the festival, I'm doing this stuff. I've been ordering rare VHS. So you can be focused.
What?
So,
wow.
Let's talk a little bit about this. Again, in my childhood, my mom was obsessed with Lorenzo Lamas, so I watched a lot of Renegade growing up on Saturdays on Fox 35.
Oh, because it was in syndication. It was like Pensacola Wings of Gold. It was like one of those like syndicated shows that was just always on. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's his name? Stephen J. Quintrell, who created the greatest detective show of all time.
Mr. Rockford, yeah. Wait, does Renegade end with him throwing the paper? Like, is it the Canal logo where he's typing?
But he's also the main villain in this series.
Are you serious?
He's syndicated. He just was like, yeah, why not? Like, I control the situation here. I'm the bad guy too. I'm the one that Reno Reigns. He's always trying to kill Reno Reigns. So this Renegade copy. I was trying to. So by the way, I was trying to get. You're like, oh, VFX. Let's get into Lost Treasure of the Valley 3D. And then it's like, wait.
All of our side notes just go nowhere. It's great. They all just go back to Renegade. All these
notes. I'm just like, well, it's like this is definitely one of the most ramblingest conversations. Like
Tangent, the podcast.
It's funny because it's funny since I put up this background screen. You can actually see the green screen a little bit still. Can you see that?
No, it looks good to me. Yeah, I'm not even seeing any cutouts or anything. It looks good.
So yeah, I found all this stuff at Dollar Tree. There was all this Dollar Tree green stock paper, and I was like, well, I can make a wall. I'm a freeloader here.
According to your landlord,
Carolyn Davis, aka Mrs. Wholehead.
She
doesn't live on the property, and it was inherited from her dead father who lived in building number 1. So
she has no claim to any of this, at all. Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy. If you really want to get into it, it's like my girlfriend was like, who definitely tried to help me get she helped me lawyer up and stuff like that. She is in real estate in financial district in San Francisco. Oh. She did an investigation on who owns this building because the owner, who doesn't live here, would not give me information at all of where she lived or anything. And so she doesn't play games like that. And so
is that a quote?
Sassy attitude on that one, but and getting into this is Lost Treasure of the Valley, man. So and then we'll get to Renegade here again soon.
I love how you're tiering the tangents. You're just like, we've got. It's like Minority Report with tangents. You're just like, we got the Renegade.
I have to. It's like we are an interview podcast show. So I have.
Well, no, but actually, to bring it all back, and then please continue the landlord story. The way that we did the VFX for Lost Treasure, they were done in a program called Flame, which is a really great editing system. It's such a great editing system that the people that are really, really good at it, they call themselves Flame artists, because it's used in the commercial world a lot, because it uses a VFX system that's very similar to Nuke. So it's node based. So if you actually look at some of the VFX that were built for Lost Treasure, it's like a map of tangents. It's like circle, 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 and all these lines connecting them. Just wanted to say everything that you're saying right now is completely relevant to the topic again. Please continue the landlord story. I want to hear the rest of this.
What I'm getting down to is the Lost Cave of Sepulpa literally is underneath this building. It is the house from Poltergeist. It's literally going to crush itself up.
That's a scary thought. Oh my God, that sounds horrific.
2020,
but awesome.
Anything can happen in 2020, as we all learned.
Yeah, no, totally.
Ask Eddie Van Halen, R.I.P.
Oh man, that's a whole podcast. So sad.
Well, and it's crazy. My last concert was George knew he kind of owed me some favors, and he was like, "Hey man, call me last minute. It's like, you want to go see David Lee Roth and Kiss in Oakland tonight?" I'm like, at work. I'm like,
you're like, yes.
And then literally Corona was coming in, and then they even announced it. But I finally got to see Kiss and David Lee Roth live, and that was the last thing before everything shut down. I was like, dude, I can die happy, or I don't need to go to a concert ever again.
That is a good last I've even if it's just, so I'm guessing, was it just was it Gene and Paul and some of the better hired guns, or was it like Ace isn't with them anymore, right? Like they're just like,
No.
okay,
Yeah.
he's too much of a liability.
Together was, I think, Detroit Rock City. The movie brought them together for like a tour.
Detroit. Now there's another tangent. There's a director. My editor buddy actually knows him. He's made some pretty fun movies. That Rifkin guy. It's Detroit Rock City, The Chase, Henry Rollins.
One of my favorite '90s movies that might make an appearance on VHS Surprise.
Oh please! I haven't seen that since Comedy Central in the '90s. Please.
My mom took me to see that as a kid and was so
theater?
affected by that film. And we didn't get into the part where they had sex in the car. It was
That's
like,
right.
They said Jesus Christ, or they said curse words back to back, and then the dead bodies in the car that flew out.
Yeah, that's
and she
right.
literally pulled me from the seat in the Gilroy Cinemas, pulled me from my seat, me yelling like, "Why are we leaving? This movie's so much fun!" And she's like, "How dare this movie? This movie's feeding the team. It should be R-rated." And she like bitched out the she Karen'd the poor theater person outside.
So
all I tried to do was like, "Can I sneak back in?" I was like 8 years old, like, I want to watch this. It's like, and she had done this to me on Dumb and Dumber too, like a month ago.
Oh come on! That's like
Mom, but I just like.
That's like you never talk. So okay, I have a similar story with
The Chase. It's like one of my favorite getting pulled from.
No. Well, it's funny you mentioned the PG-13ness of it all, because I remember I have a similar story where a buddy of mine, we had this was a sleepover, so this was like 12, 13. We rented from Blockbuster the immortal Bob Clark classic, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. And it's funny, I only got about 5 minutes into it, and the reason is it's a PG rated movie, but as you know, in the 70s, PG could mean it's like a snuff film, but because they don't say the F word, it's totally fine. We rented this. It was a sleepover. We're 13. We started off by watching The Gate. Really good primer for, Night of Horror. It's like, all right, we're into it. Very first preview that they show on Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, Faces of Death. The original. The first, and I mean, the announcer, I threw up. I was a kid and I was a wuss, and I just saw them beating a monkey. I mean, it looks fake now, but I mean, when you're seeing that trailer as a kid, and my friend's dad like took it to Blockbuster, and he was like, "You better label this R." And I felt so bad afterwards, because then I found out about all this horrible stuff about Blockbuster, that they were basically just owned by, censors, and they, you couldn't get like the real Requiem for a Dream from them. We got like a Man Bites Dog that was like PG-13 from them. And I was like, how can they edit these movies? But yeah.
That was the IFC chat. I'm very fortunate. I don't think the Blockbuster I had would even carry Man Bites Dog. So.
Okay. So we at least got to see like a cut version, which is still good. I mean, even without the violence, that's a pretty awesome movie.
There was a trick. Now we're getting into the Blockbuster VHS tale stories. By the way, you were that kid, because there was always that one kid at sleepovers, like you watch like an erotic porno that was on, or softcore porn, right, or something. But it would be like, oh, we can't tell anyone because we're at like a sleepover, and it's the kid's house who has like the big screen TV and the big sound.
Oh yeah. Or his parents leave him alone so you can have the sleepover.
Well, yeah, they leave a bunch of kids, like a bunch of horny, like 12, 13, 15-year-old like boys, just
all getting boners at the same time. It's just so awkward.
And they leave us in this like room, on a retreat for our church. It's like
hot medicine.
And so, but no, it's like, but there's always the one kid, gets the boner. One kid who throws up. The one kid that like, oh yeah, his parents are really, yeah.
and it's funny because it was
up on and like throws in the closet, sadly, and doing like. I don't encourage that behavior, but sometimes I was that kid. Sometimes I also was the kid that was like, "Oh, I'm glad it wasn't me today." So,
I was the boner kid and the throw up kid. Yeah, we've all been there. It's a rite of passage. It's like it just happens. Like,
and then of course try to make a movie about these things, in your 30s. So.
Yeah, and you're like, it's not quite the nostalgic, cute look back that we thought it was going to be. It's mostly just boners and thrown up. That's pretty much
It's a little too QAnon now, a little too Me Too. But you know what still works? Peter Venkman and Dana Barrett's relationship in Ghostbusters. It's very classy, even though he is a little pushy on her. So.
No, I agree. And it's funny because I was just watching some, it might have been a Movies That Made Us type of thing, where they were talking about how Sigourney, her character was supposed to be a model she's like, I want to be a musician. And apparently it was her idea that she turns into a dog. Like, apparently they were stuck on the Keymaster gatekeeper thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, where were you going with it if not there for them to be dog? Like that blew my mind. And they were just like, yep. Sigourney suggested she could be a dog, and Sigourney, man, you know, nominated for Best Actress for Aliens. How freaking crazy is that? For Aliens, she was nominated for Best Actress. Like, that's 86.
I feel like we're like 2 or 3 movies away from Emily Blunt being a little bit like the Sigourney Weaver of this era. Because if you think about Edge of Tomorrow,
if Edge of Tomorrow had been a hit that it should have been with, you know,
that
Paxton,
sequel still might be made. People are still gonna. There's a possibility of the sequel.
I hope so. I know. I was reading about that, and it's like, do you think they're gonna go with a live, die, repeat type variation? The freaking title that it could have, should have. I mean, that I don't know. Maybe that would have added a few more.
It had bad timing, but I was trying to. It's like I had a competition with Tom Seymour, who did VHS Massacre 2. We were talking about John Krasinski and how like he doesn't do horror movies and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I think it's his wife. I think Emily Blunt has an official. I think she really is following the Sigourney Weaver path of genre strong female leads.
She's like pushing in that direction. That I could see that. I mean,
it's and I think she's the one who convinced him to do Quiet Place. I think he laughed at it, and then he's like, no, actually, we can make something here. And who's now the lead in part 2 if we ever see it?
If we ever see it, if it ever comes out, yeah.
It's her, and I think in some ways it's these decisions that. But you think Looper, all these like great strong female leads in genre, right. It's all her most of the time, and this is like close I've seen since Sigourney. I mean,
no, that's true, and it's funny that you bring up Looper because I was trying to describe that to somebody who amazingly hadn't seen it, and I was like, you know, I was like, do you like Blade Runner? Yeah, like you like stuff like Blade Runner. They're like, yeah, and like, do you like Witness? And they're like, yeah, like, and I'm like, well, you want to watch them both? You want to watch them at the same time? Here you go. Yeah, it's a great combo. And I freaking love Looper. I remember seeing the theater, and I was like, this Rian Johnson guy. He's one to watch. You know, he's one of these up and comers.
I know. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's got something. Which is a whole other podcast of Rian Johnson stuff. Which I am not a fan of Knives Out. It's the first time I've sat through a Rian Johnson movie. I defended Last Jedi numerous of times,
but did not click with Knives Out. Wasn't up your alley.
Someone got really mad about this. Okay, so I was waiting to see Clint Eastwood's Richard Jewell movie, which
my god, which I've seen part. It's a long story, but I was working at a job where they were QCing it. And I'm like, this movie is fantastic, and I'm like, I have to finish that.
The really politics in that movie are very questionable. I think it is very, very. But because there's
100%, questionable, but very well made, like, but very questionable.
It's because it's the Billy Ray script at the end of the day. I think.
Totally, yeah.
And I wonder if Eastwood, if he hadn't directed, what would the movie be? I think it would actually maybe have gotten a little bit more. It's interesting. I feel like the script was so good, and the performances. But then it's like Eastwood, you could see at times where it's like, come on, man, you could do 2 more takes of that.
That's right, because he's got kind of a very kind of relaxed.
It's become too relaxed at this point because you can see that like the Paris train film that he did with the real actors. Like,
oh my god, I didn't even see that. So is that did he just kind of go through that? Yeah, that's.
That's like a bad comedy.
See, that's too bad because I remember when he did stuff like Tightrope, where he's like, I'm going to do a kinky Dirty Harry. And, you know, all of his Malpaso stuff had a very distinct look to it in the 80s. And it seems like he's maybe kind of gotten a little bit more, you know, he's like, I'm 100 years old. I'm going to just chill out now.
It's weird because, like, sometimes, like, his first AD, like that Trouble with the Curve movie.
Right.
He took directing credit on it. But yet it's like, but here's AD who's like been his AD for like years. So it's technically like an Eastwood movie still.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's like he's using the Eastwood. That's true. I love how completely far away we've gotten from the first tangent that we were on, which is amazing. Can we go back to Renegade? I'm dying to know more about Renegade, the Renegade movie.
Why are we on Clint Eastwood stuff right now? Anyways, the long story short with Knives Out, I didn't see all of it. I saw about halfway through. I am a huge Ana de Armas fan. I am a defender of Knock Knock.
Can we just talk about how Knock Knock is just like, I'm still recovering from that. I really liked it, but I am still recovering from the utter nightmare of seeing Keanu Reeves reduced to just not knowing how to freak out because he's so freaked out. Like that movie was a nightmare.
It's the best Eli Roth movie.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree.
I think part 2, Hostel, is actually a far improvement of part 1. Part 1 has some actually fun moments.
I like part 1. You know, I should see part 2. I really like part 1. I've defended part 1. I'm like, dude, it's a cool movie. It's really well shot. It's a fun movie. It's, you know, it's
part 2. Part 1 actually, I think the second half is pretty good. The first half is like, it's fun, but it's sort of like, yeah, this movie's like, all right. And Cabin Fever is a lot of fun too. But I think Knock Knock to me was like all these like sensibilities and what he'd been doing with like trying to do this like his exploitation genre with like Green Inferno and Aftershock. I think Knock Knock surprisingly was the one that he got right and made better. I think Death Game's a fun movie, but I think it's a better movie.
So is Death Game worth seeing? Because I'm a huge Sandra Locke fan. I love anything that she does.
Cassell's in it. I mean, yeah,
that's right.
It's a good movie. Like it's I really can't be negative on any at this point in my life on any 70s exploitation movie. There's definitely ones that are like, well, probably wouldn't watch that again. But there's a spirit in those movies where it's just sort of like, it's just like everyone coming together, you know, bring your mom, bring your pa, you know,
bring your mafia with their money to,
you know, yeah. And I can't really get, there's some that, yeah, you're just like, all right, well, yeah, I'll definitely not be watching that again, but let's go. Bob says he liked it.
I think I still have to finish. I got about an hour into one called Cop Killers, which is a two guys on the right. Did you watch that one? That's a pretty grimy one. That's pretty.
What's great about Grindhouse and about exploitation in the 70s is that if it wasn't produced by a studio on some level, so like, and even then, like sometimes like there's, you know, when you get into blaxploitation, there's some changes with names. It goes by 4 or 5 different names. Like you have to kind of like, oh, what version did you see of that? Like, oh, it's literally like this title card change. Like, there's like these generic names they went by. So that's why you have like 4 movies named Nightmare in the late 80s, the late 70s, really.
There's like 600 films called Nightmare. It wasn't like Cannibal Ferox called like 3 different things. It wasn't like, it was Make Them Die Slowly.
Well, if you get into the Italian stuff, it's a like, what format did you see? What theater did you see that at? Like, who was like the manager of that theater? If you lived in Chicago, if you lived in like Philadelphia, like that gets into another like region that like it intersects. But you're like, yeah, like I saw this movie and like someone got eaten, and you like, and it literally is, and I really got sick, and, you know, and stuff, and you're like, oh, I think they're talking about Cannibal Holocaust, but it went by a different name. And you're like, it's Cannibal Holocaust. And you're like, no, it's like Animal Killer Instinct, or, you know, animal, you know, humans versus animals or something.
Like, I want to see Cannibal Killer Instinct. So John, my friend John, who helped, he produced Lost Treasure of the Valley, actually. When we first moved out to Los Angeles, right from NYU, from like 2000, this was 2004, you know, we were idiots. We were like, we have a film school degree. We'll get film jobs. That didn't happen. We ended up, for the last few months that I stayed in LA, because I moved back east because I was a wuss and couldn't make it work. I had a really interesting day job. I worked with a guy who by night wrote for Video Watchdog, one of the, you know, wacky, one of the cool. So he actually, you know, was like, he put some good movies in my head. But one of the things that John and I did in the last few months that I was in LA, still have not seen Cannibal Holocaust, but we rented every other, it must have been every other, like Lenzi, Man from Deep Red. We sank to such a level of depravity. And then somebody was like, oh no, it gets worse. Like, don't rent like the guinea pig movies or something. They're like, Cannibal Ferox is like step by step on ABC's TGIF compared to some of these other ones that I'm too afraid to watch. Yeah.
We had a revitalization of that because were you in LA around like 2010, 2011?
That's just when I moved to, and I saw some good movies at the New Art then. I saw Maniac and stuff. Like right around that time is when I moved to LA.
Because the revitalization of that is, we were kind of past the Saw era. We were in that post 9/11 terror, you know, what was labeled as torture porn, even though like,
oh, for sure,
weren't I really, that is one of the one coin terms. I'm like, what does that mean? Someone called one of my short torture porn. I was like, it's a grindhouse film because
Right. Yeah, it's just grindhouse. Yeah, that's
someone
all.
gets murdered, murders people with various objects, and it's super graphic and violent and super seedy. But someone called it, one of my filmmaking heroes, like, oh, I'm not into torture porn. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's almost like well, because it makes it sound like it's just you're just showing killings. Like there's no art to it. It's a put down term basically.
Well, it's funny. There's
which is
people
too
who
bad.
name it, like, I definitely think the Saw movies kind of maybe resemble that because it really is just like, what are the kills kind of thing.
Oh,
But
for sure. Yeah.
but then it, like, disingenuous is too, like, you may not like Darren Lynn Bow's movies, but like the guy did Reba Genetic Opera and like and Mother's Day and stuff like, and tried to do different things, even though I don't think Mother's Day works. I prefer that the traumas version. But Reba Genetic is like, it's different. We're actually living that world right now, oddly. But
yeah, no, I mean some of those were so God, it's what is the Argento movie where I think De Palma stole a shot of it for Raising Cain, where it's the guy that's he stands down and the killer's standing right, but oh God, what is it?
I have not actually ever seen Raising Cain. It's one of my De Palmas I've not seen.
It's you know what? 3 cheers to De Palma. So he made the movie. I think it did well, but it wasn't like a huge hit. He re-edited the movie just before it came out. I think there's something about how like the John Lithgow schizophrenic kidnapper story was the B story, but he moved it up to the A story. Some guy in like Belgium or something re-edited the movie, and De Palma was like, "I'm putting that out as a Blu-ray." So if you get a Blu-ray, you can get the original and then the fan version. But there's an Argento movie about God, which one is it? It's one of his early ones. It's the author. He's like a Stephen King type writer, and there's
Tenebrae.
Tenebrae. Yeah. So I remember watching, and I was having this conversation with torture porn with somebody, and there was a screening of, I think it was Dress to Kill and Tenebrae at the Egyptian, and Dress to Kill is like a PG movie compared to some of the Argento stuff, but I'd never seen Tenebrae, and I'm watching Tenebrae, and I'm like, this is freaking nuts. I mean, it's I really liked it, but I remember thinking like, as much as people are reacting and calling this torture porn now, what were people thinking in 80 or 79 when they were seeing like nightmare logic Argento movies that are also super gory, like super, like people getting their arms chopped off and spraying blood everywhere. Like, and it's not funny. It's like really gross. Like I was blown away. I was like, man, it must have blown some minds back then.
I mean, essentially it was, a lot of people kind of, it's weird because I think Argento had still the respectability because he came from the Italian cinemas. So
that's true. Wrote for Once Upon a Time in the West. He had the Leone seal of approval. So yeah.
Bertolucci did too. Bertolucci went this way. Argento went that way.
Two sides of the same Italian coin. Yeah, the Bertolucci way and the.
Getting back to your descent into Cannibal Holocaust, cannibal movies, Diodato's right down the middle.
You're right. He's down the middle. Wow, there is a middle ground between Bertolucci and Argento. That I never even thought of that.
So getting into the 2010-2011 comment before we get to Renegade. We'll get to Renegade. Is that so? That was the era of Human Centipede, a Serbian film. That era when they were running in festivals and theaters.
Yeah, that's right.
Turn people into like, oh, did you see these Japanese ones? And then you go down that descent. I definitely had to draw a line because I was writing for websites and they're like, oh, do you want to see this one or that? And I was like, I think a Serbian film, I mean, if you've not seen it or not, I've not seen it since I saw it at Another Hole in the Head.
I've read about it and I'm too scared to watch it because I'm a super squeamish. Like there's a scene in a movie called Princess and the Warrior. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, I know Tom Tickford's work.
Yeah, love that movie. Love all his movies, but when he cuts the breathing hole in her throat and puts the straw, I had to leave. I thought I was going to faint. Like I am a complete wuss. And from what I've read about Serbian film, I'm like, I will probably not get over that for years. So I don't know if I'm right about that, but I was a little nervous.
There's things in it, and especially now as society is degraded into such a, I mean, this is 10 years ago. I mean, when I saw the trailer, it was my first time I covered Hole in the Head for a site. And I'd gone to Hole in the Head previously, briefly, a couple years before this. I think they're like 7th or 8th year. And I saw the trailer. I was like, oh, this looks really intense. And I'd heard that it played at South by. And then someone I had a pass. I could see anything for free. Someone was like, did you hear about what, yada, I'm not going to get into what.
I've heard some things that happen and it would sound pretty bad.
The one thing that everyone talks about with the movie, if you want to go look it up, the one thing. And I was like, whoa, I was like, I'm about to go see something that I don't know. And I'm like, I had not seen Cannibal Holocaust yet. I had actually been very much like, after seeing Serbian, I was like, I'm cool. I don't need to see Cannibal Holocaust. But people told me like, hey, it's actually like pretty good. Like you'll be surprised. And I was like, oh, I'll wait for it. Went to Serbian Film, was like, whoa, this movie's like, it's literally what it just felt for me was Crank, the Jason Statham movies.
Yeah.
In a foreign film with like, I think with Human Centipede that it's like it gets into the farce on this one. This wasn't a farce. Like this was literally a movie that had some very dark humor and ends on some pretty bad notes of like dark humor, but like intersected into this weird sort of like, okay, this is what it's like seeing something from the 70s about Vietnam and someone made something about like the war crimes of Serbia.
Oh, interesting. So it's like an allegory, basically. It's like
it's an allegory.
Okay.
But there's stuff in it that, and the scene that everyone talks about, it's not really in there. I saw the uncensored version. It's there, but it's not like it. It's literally an R-rated version of if you think about that.
It's suggested. Almost.
But then the ending is something that is like, yeah, I will never forget that ending. And I've never saw the movie again. There's like, but the guy next to me who was writing for another site was like, he's like this very, he was like the coolest gay film critic writer of the time.
Oh, cool.
And he was Michael Gillian, just great guy. And
that's awesome.
He just turned to me. I was like, "What do you think?" He's like, "I loved it. Like that movie is so beautifully shot. Like." People like, I thought I was gonna see something that was like crude and like, oh, it's like I loved it. I'm gonna go see it again because we're playing it tomorrow night. And I was like, cool. Like,
you're like, I don't think I can do that twice in a row. Or did you? Did you go twice in a row?
No, I didn't go. He did. But I know I had other things to do. That like this is back when we were at the Roxy and stuff like that. So I had other things, and I was living in LA, so I was just there to visit, see the festival. So it was
but from what you've told me, I mean, like I certain things will scar me. Like I am still scarred from, and I love the movie, but I'm still scarred by the end of Driller Killer. Nothing really bad, gore-wise, happens at the end of Driller Killer, but it is scary as hell. It is a really creepy, haunting. Abel Ferrara
out, and you wait for it.
It's still, I remember watching that in my place. I was living in Queens at the time. It was this kind of a spooky apartment. It was dark outside. It was like one of those like gray days in winter. And my roommate wasn't around and I'm like, this was not the right atmosphere to watch this because I'm freaking out right now. It was very.
If I was a projectionist and it was like 1984, 83 and 42nd Street still exists at that time, I would have gotten the last reel of Driller Kill, or I would just gotten Driller Kill, the reel for it, and then spliced in literally like the beginning or the ending, really, let's say that, of Ms. 45, where all of a sudden she's just blasting everybody at the end. And it'd be my Tyler Durden moment and be like, oh, whoops, wrong movie. Sorry, wrong Abel Ferrara. Oh, he's in the audience? Oh, shit, he's probably high as fuck. He's going to kill me.
I would have loved that. So it's funny because I was at a film festival with a girl that literally looked like Zoe Lund, and I was like, "You have to see this movie, Miss 45," because she was a filmmaker too. I'm like, "This is the premise. You'll love this, and you look like her." Like, and it's a crazy movie, and it's just I mean, I was trying to tell somebody that, like, dude, I'm like, you look at Abel Ferrara's movies, you see some things that showed up 20 years later. The Fear City. I don't know if you saw a movie that he did called Fear City, which is
Fear City. It's on my list of. There's stuff that you just can't get a hold of.
It's not. It's exactly. It's one of those ones. I think like Netflix had it as like a disc.
Another one that you have to go to like Videotheque and get like with another movie. I think like special effects or something.
That's right. Exactly. It's like a two-for deal. Fear City is Tom Berenger and Billy D. Williams teaming up to stop a killer of strippers, I think. And if you ever wondered, yeah, it's of course it makes it. If you ever wondered where the doing naked karate in your room and being a villain from Die Hard 2 came from, it came from Fear City. Abel Ferrara was doing it first. And I'm just like, what an interesting thing for Rennie Harlan to kind of pick and choose from the Ferrara oeuvre, you know? Like there's other things from Ferrara that we just haven't, like, I almost wanted to play a game with my friend and be like, let's just go back and watch Miss 45, Driller Killer, Fear City, King of New York. King of New York probably has more obvious influences, but it's like maybe there's this whole history of Ferrara red herrings throughout current movies that we just haven't.
There's something that's there. I think he's the unsung hero of American cinema. Like,
oh yeah, he's freaking genius. He incidentally was a substitute film teacher at my friend's class at School of Visual Arts in New York, and he did not disappoint. He was as Ferrara as you would expect him to be.
Because it's something that and I got a chance very briefly. I had my moment at the Sunshine to meet Ferrara.
Oh, that's awesome! Wow.
And I was hoping to be like, you're an NYU student. I'm like, oh, come on, Ferrara. There's a Ferrara story here at some point.
I wish I had his Ferrara. Jesus, yeah. But you got to meet him. That's amazing. I wish I got to meet him.
Very briefly, I was just right there in front of it was the midnight screening of King of New York. I was like my first weekend in New York. And I was like, cool, they're showing like one of my favorite movies growing up. And I was kind of bummed my buddy I was staying with I was like, this is like one of our favorite movies. Like, it's Walken, it's Buscemi, it's Caruso, it's like what we
Larry Fishburne. I don't even think it was Lawrence yet. It was Larry freaking
Wesley
Fishburne.
Snipes, you know.
Nice. Yep.
You know, it's like the list goes on. You mean like and so like, but like, and he's like, my buddy was like, nah, like I'm dating this girl. I want to go hang out with her. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, you go do that. And then I'm like, so I get there, I'm alone, and I'm like, hey everyone, oh, is Abel Ferrara gonna be here? Like, cause I know he lives around here, right? Like, but this is also like the New York that is now like that is very Giuliani clean New York. So maybe it's like I was like they're like and the guy at the door is like I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen this movie, and I'm like okay. And so like I go in and it's a midnight. So I'm like okay, like and I'm like I'll sit because you know how the Sunshine had like those weird auditoriums.
I miss it so much. It was so cool. Yeah.
It was like I think the second or third floor.
Yeah, this was the one in New York. That you were at. Is this the one you're talking about? The one you were at the one. Yeah. Okay. All right. This is cool. I remember this. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So and then there's not a lot of people actually. There's like a good chunk of people, but I'm sitting by myself in like fifth row to the front or something, and I'm just waiting there, and they're like, and the guy comes in and she's like, hey everyone, it's the guy who was there at the door who didn't know who Abel Ferrara was, or maybe he was playing a game with him because he goes like. So we got actually a special guest here. He was just outside having a cigarette and then found out we were playing his movie. So everyone, please welcome Abel Ferrara to and he's all like, you know, ruffled, like just Ferrara out, and he's just like, thank you. What to say about King York that has been said already. You know, and just goes on, like rags on the producer who's like, this motherfucker put his name. I've never seen a movie nor worked on a movie where the opening title credit has the producer's name is the first thing you see. Fuck that guy. Also, fuck Wesley Snipes. He got me fired off of a movie. Hey, you know what? Actually, Wesley's Wesley's having a bad when he was right in jail. And then he just goes on for a minute and it's like, and I don't make movies anymore. I fucking love movies, but I hate making movies. This is I got my Conan episode. Like I'm just sitting there and like I'm just like,
wow. He was everything that you wanted him to be. That's everything that I would want him to be. Like I would want him to be this, which is so cool that he lived up to that. That's so awesome. Like he was just.
And he literally, this is what he ends on. Is like he's like he said some other things that I don't remember. I'm just like gazing at him. He's probably like, "Who the fuck is this kid like googling at me?" I'm like, come on, tell me more, kind of thing. And so, and I'm sitting alone. I'm just right there, and
staring at him.
We'll get ready after this. And he just says, he's like, "I don't make movies anymore. I'm in the restaurant business." And then he pulls out like, "Actually, shit, I forgot." And I think he yelled to someone like in the back. He's like, "Oh yeah, we made a movie right here. This is where we put your movies on." At the end, it was like a little mini like gig drive in his hand. Like, this is my next movie, all right here. And I think it was 444 last, I think at the time.
Yeah, because he does like all these movies with Defoe now, I think, right? Like it's like all these, yeah.
I mean, he had Asya in there for a while. He had Walken in there for a while. It's like,
that's
but now
right.
he's like, but then I think after that, a few years later, he got married this like young Italian woman, and he like lives in Italy in exile and has a kid, like had a baby, and he's just like, he's doing all right. It's like,
I mean, to be raised by Abel Ferrara, man. I mean that's like a whole. That's a whole
like
other
Grandpa
thing.
Abel. Like that's like kind of maybe that's the guy you want. Like he's lived the life. He's frank. He's honest, but he's not on heroin anymore.
Yeah, well, it sounds like maybe he just chose his drugs well. Maybe he picked heroin and it just kind of preserved him instead of like, thank God he wasn't like a. But it's funny because I remember reading somewhere that they were just like, oh, every drug was an Abel drug. Abel was just like the friend of mine that he substitute taught at SVA. He's like, oh, we had to help him to the elevator. I mean, he did not disappoint. This was like around the time of like Gangs of New York, so maybe he was still in his partying phase, but. That's amazing. That sounds like the best possible theater to see that at. That really is a really cool, sadly gone spot. Ugh, so
yeah,
sad.
We're in an interesting time, which I think is something that I've been trying to highlight with this festival this year a lot with virtual is doing the Mr. Hollywood's Warped Dimension got really excited where it's like, if this is live stuff, like to me, this is putting on a production. Is it ideally what I want? It sometimes is like, well, am I like Billy Freakin after doing Sorcerer? And then like, well, I didn't get to make that movie, but I get to make Cruisin'.
or as another friend of mine says, he's just like, no, he's like, he got to make The Brinks Job with Peter Falk, which I still haven't seen, but I heard is actually.
I've never seen The Brinks Job, nor The Night They Raided Minsky's. But
oh my God, I heard that's pretty good. I'm actually kind of a Deal of the Century fan myself. It's
I saw it as a kid on TV. I always got it confused with Best Defense because it's almost the same story. And
so so did I. So I did the same thing. But the funny thing about I have been on a quest this year to try to find out more about Deal of the Century because is there a more bizarre combination than Friedkin and Chevy Chase? Apparently, I read something, they got along, which is just so bizarre, the fact that they got along. But it was a Paul Brickman script. And I remember reading an interview where he, before he made Risky Business, his freaking masterpiece, he was just like, yeah, I just got sick of them ruining my scripts. And I'm like, is there a universe where there's like a brilliant version of Deal of the Century written and directed by, because I love Freakin', but I mean, it's an odd movie, but yeah, Sorcerer is another one that would have been tailor-made for the Sunshine Cinema. But I think when we were going to that theater, Sorcerer hadn't quite, rebounded in the film view, which is funny because I always heard whispers of it, but nobody was saying what a masterpiece it was. And then I saw it and I'm like, this is absolutely a freaking masterpiece. This movie is amazing. Like,
yeah. Well, I think also what helped with him personally, like they gave him access and he like redigitized everything.
Oh yeah, for
screen.
Sure.
Like they did a real good push. They tried it with Out of the Blue and they've done it at 4K now. I don't know if you've ever seen that Hopper movie.
I love Out of the Blue. And I was so bummed out when I saw that I didn't get a chance to contribute to the Kickstarter because I saw the worst quality DVD of that. And I'm like, this is one of my favorite. I'm a huge Dennis Hopper. I mean, just colors, Out of the Blue, Easy Rider. Last movie, I saw the restoration of that at the Egyptian, but Out of the Blue, have they released the 4K version yet? Because I'm dying to see that.
It's happening at AFI this week at the fest on the online.
Wow. Okay. Oh, it is. Okay, that's amazing. I'm dying to see that.
Hopper and Hopper Wells is happening. I think it's the third film. I can't off the top of my head. I'm gonna kick myself for it, but that's happening.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely gonna fork over money for AFI Fest. Which sucks is that's the only bad thing about this coronavirus. Like it's with theaters closed. Is I would love to have seen that 4K copy of Out of the Blue because
oh my god,
Spin
so
and Family
much.
did the restruck print back in 2013. I saw it for the first time there.
You saw a print of it? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, they showed it. There was a restruck. Someone did a restruck of a 35 of it, and that and Gomo I saw at the exact same time, and I was like, I want to make a movie like this.
So this is horrible. I have never, still to this day, I keep hearing it. Everybody's like, it's right up your alley, man. You'd love it.
It's a Linda Matz double feature.
I'm a huge dude. The Wanderers, Out of the Blue, Days of Heaven. I was watching Days of Heaven for the first time, which seems bizarre, but I'd never seen it. And I'm like,
never seen all of it. It's the one movie where I'm like, I just need to see this in a theater or on a really big projector because it's a movie you stare at. It's not a movie you just kind of pop in.
That's true. And bringing it back to an hour ago, Steve Desjardins, who did Miracle Mile, one of the stories he told me on Facebook was he was a projectionist at a theater in Texas when Malick was screening either dailies or the long version of Days of Heaven. And he's just like, I just remember putting on reels for Malick, reels. And he had a great story about how Malick caught him. Malick would always order like these barbecue sandwiches or something. And Desjardins was like the starving film student. And Malick caught him taking his leftovers out of the trash. And he's like, he was really cool about it, but he's like, it's embarrassing. Malick caught me eating his leftovers.
Eating out of the garbage. Which is true. It's like, it's just weird. It's like, it's one of those moments in your life where it's like, if Malick, if something else happened where like you saw him like desperate, like you need a sandwich, here you go. And you're like, Terrence Malick gave me a sandwich. It's more of like, oh no, I didn't have that moment. He saw me eat out of the garbage. It's like,
I don't think exactly. Terry's not quite. He doesn't sound like he was as charitable as like he would buy him one, which is sad.
It's interesting. It's like sometimes when you meet your heroes, you have those moments, kind of thing like that.
You know who wasn't like that? You know who was the complete opposite of that? And so I was lucky enough to intern there for Trauma. I was lucky enough to intern there for like two or 3 weeks in film school. But then I helped a friend of mine who actually worked there briefly. He got Lloyd to act in his student film. And like, it was, as far as I was concerned, it was like meeting Orson Welles, and he did not disappoint. He was, I don't know if you've met him at like any like convent or through Kansas or at conventions, but my take on it was he was just as awesome as his books. He was such a wonderful guy. He was just such a cool dude. Like,
yeah, he did not disappoint.
No, you met him too. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
No, well, the thing is, it's interesting with where we're at with Warp Dimension. Fingers crossed, he might be showing up for another Hole in the Head.
Yeah, that's great. That's
I always feel bad.
God.
I can't say that, and then it does happen because I did that on another episode already, and I'm like, it's gonna happen with another person. It's like, because Promo was a real big help in the festival this year with Warp Dimension and showing stuff off, and it's the stuff that encouraged me. It was funny you mentioned a while back about Watch Hound Video and Lloyd's book, actually, what I learned from the Toxic Avenger.
One of my favorite books of all time. So freaking good. Yeah.
So as a kid, this is my like out of the blue moment. Like my mom was like the single mom that like was working all the time. And so after school, I literally had to go take a bus to like a public bus to a library in my town. And I'd sit there. I'd call it the long sentence story, my school library. It wasn't the school library. It was like the public library. But essentially, there was these kids that were just left there, or I don't know what they were. And so I kind of got in trouble with some of them. I tried to avoid them. And weirdly enough, they had a little movie section, and I read a lot of Watch Hound Video, and I read that book. And I was like, why is there's nudity in this book. I don't know if I should be looking at this.
They had this at your public library.
Yeah.
All I need to learn about filmmaking, I learned from the Toxic Avenger.
And I don't think I'd be here this day if it wasn't for that book. So
honestly, I remember going to, I forget the bookstore, but it was like late 90s, and I got Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, and the Lloyd book. And I was like, this is it. These are, and I've talked to people subsequently who were like, Yeah, a lot of the Easy Rider stuff was made up or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I want the reality to be Scorsese out of his mind on coke, just chasing after his girlfriend. Like that, I want that to be true. I want all of that to be
Oh,
true.
I think that there's I think Freakin's the one guy who yells about it because it's like it is like it was before like TMZ kind of stuff, so it was definitely pulling back the veil on these filmmakers and
Oh,
like
none of them come off good. I mean, they all
yeah,
come off as monsters.
I
Like
think
that's the
Freakin's the one that I was like, whoa, like this guy's got some demons going on there. So
totally.
but it's
He
funny.
seemed very twisted.
But it's funny because I think I don't know, and let's get to Renegade because I really
Renegade.
So
Let's go back to Renegade.
Copy was a
Yeah.
movie, and my mom watched a lot of it. I remember, I think we had a copy of it at the house, but I never watched it. And then if you look it up, there's actually no Renegade movie.
Oh, was it just episodes that were sewn together, basically?
So it was packaged by Stephen J. Cantrell, I think, with Warner Brothers, to make the dude was an episode like. I just read something about I read a book on what's his name, David Chase.
Oh, interesting. That's probably a cool book. Yeah.
And they got a little bit of just probably one of the genius capitalistic TV producers of our time and inspired some people. So he repackaged this version, and it's the season finale of the first season, where it is like part warrior, part Running Man, part Karate Kid. So
wait, the show overall, or just this particular
this one?
What?
Because
it's like a tournament or something.
Yeah. So part one, because it was a 2-part episode, and it's about Lorenzo Ramos, aka Reno Reigns, finds out a war buddy of his brother's who was lost in Vietnam. His war buddy, his best friend's war buddy. Sorry, let me get that around. It's his lost brother, his POW lost brother, who was in Vietnam, who taught Reno everything to be like a good human being and martial.
Taught him to be a renegade. Yeah.
It's a phone call in the middle of the night. It actually kind of starts out like The Long Goodbye, if you think about it.
Wow. Because you were describing it to me, and I'm like, why did this sound familiar? This like I'm picturing.
It's a phone call, and it's his brother's best friend who also disappeared in Vietnam, and he says, I know your brother actually is alive. I'm alive. We actually have been doing something that I'm not proud of. But meet me here. And then he shows up at the spot. And then that guy literally doesn't get like shot like in the cab. Like he takes a cab ride, and the cab driver is actually like a part of this like web of a mystery.
This is all in the same episode. This is all
in the first 5 minutes. And this guy who calls Reno, Ron Zalama's character, literally does the weirdest cut of jumping out of a car I've ever seen when you're about to shoot somebody, and then does like a barrel roll. The stunt guy did the barrel. I guess they can afford the stunt guy, so he doesn't do the barrel. But he's down in like the gutter and he's running, gets shot, and then Reno, and then the cab driver stops and then shoots him with a silencer. Reno shows up and he's like, oh, I'm too late, and he's like, yeah. But your brother, I have a tape of him. Watch this. And his brother's doing cage matches. It's like a championship cage match.
So it's like Deer Hunter also? Like his brother is like fighting overseas, like
well, his brother's in Mexico in cage matches. That essentially, I guess there was and so what happens is that Reno and the two side characters, Bobby Sixkiller, the great Bernard Branscombe, love him to death.
I've heard of this.
Some Native American wisdoms about being a searcher and stuff like that. And then Lorenzo Lamas' wife at the time is like the love interest also / side character that helps Bobby Sixkiller.
Oh, we had to crowbar her in somehow, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He says, I need to keep after him. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go do some investigation. And he goes to, she goes with him to San Diego. This is all Stu Siegel stuff, by the way. It's all San Diego, essentially. They get to San Diego. They do illegal bar fight matches for some promoter. And they're like, hey, we want to hire you. And they go like, but you need to go to Ensenada and like fight these 3 guys. And
so this is them going undercover to get into the fight circuit. Okay, all right, I'm following. Okay,
and then
right,
of course, where does this lead us to? Reno fighting his brother in a death match, and his brother is Martin Kove, aka
what? So you are literally saying it's Karate Kid, like literally.
It's
wow.
Karate Kid 3 in a lot of ways, because this is how Karate Kid 3 was very much set up with all the Vietnam stuff.
That's actually true, and
it gets better. It gets better. Charles Napier and Mitchell Ryan are the 2 dudes running the underground fight circuit scene.
So it's funny you say this, because my mind is, I mean, obviously
Renegade,
huge. That's amazing. Huge Mitchell Ryan fan. I was always a Napier fan, and then somebody was like, "Oh, you like Charles Napier? You got to watch what's the Russ Meyer one that he's in? Oh, the second, but Ultra Super Vixens or Ultra
Nate Valley, the Ultra Vixens.
Yes, so he's in one of the. Have you seen the one that he's in, the Russ Meyer one that he's in? Where
he's in a couple actually.
You're right. I'm sorry. He's totally in Valley of the Dolls.
He's in that era of Russ Meyer that I'm like, it's great that Russ had all this money. I think Beyond's great. I always wanted to see the 7-minute or the 7-second man with Tom Selleck in. You can't find anywhere.
That's right. It's like impossible to find, right? It's like, Beyond for me is still my favorite, but there's one of the, it's either Super Vixens or Beyond the Valley Ultra Vixens, where he jumps on a girl in a tub and stomps her. It's like, it's the most horrifying Napier moment ever, and now I just jump with glee whenever I hear that Napier is involved in anything. So I will be looking for this movie. I mean, I hope. Are you going to show this as part of the VHS
thing at some point? I'm going to show segments of it. Don't want to. Well, when will this video be up? Oh, it won't be up. I don't think.
It's just fun. I just loved how you said you're going to show. It's like an educational course on Renegade. It's like this is.
I mean. As someone who was an American Indian Studies major with a cinema minor, I guess
we will be showing selected segments from the Renegade 2-part.
Well, here's the thing, though. In some ways, I think about, should I show the whole thing? Because what I forgot to say also, because that's the gold. This is like the bronze or the silver. This is the lost treasure of.
I think so. I'm honestly wishing, like, unironically, that the box opened and it was a Renegade VHS tape. That would have been the greatest ending. I'm not even kidding. I wish that we thought of that. That's hilarious. That would have been awesome.
If you're gonna do the feature version, you got to get Lorenzo Lamas in there. So.
He'll show up for a sandwich. He's around. Yeah,
but his hair is not the hair anymore. That's the thing. It's like the hair is not there. So,
that's true. The hair.
So. So they recut, it's like, I guess almost like, so it's like 45-minute episodes, so it's about 85 minutes probably without commercials.
Oh, that's right. It was like Highlander the series length. It was like an hour with commercials type of thing.
But Highlander was interesting. Highlander did shoot European versions, or was a European cut versions. This is what I'm getting to, is that this tape has these most random softcore porn after Cinema X After Dark, has nothing to do literally with, they shot it at Stu Siegel Studios, clearly, like on the same set, but they totally midnight runned it with like Dracula, the 2 Draculas kind of thing, where they shot it's just these random sex scenes that are in it so they could make it an R-rated movie.
It's hilarious. But by the way, I just have to say this. I love the Spanish Dracula. Or is it the Mexican Dracula? Which one?
I mean, it's in Spanish, but yes, it was a Mexican production company.
The Mexican, call it sacrilege. I preferred it to the Bela Lugosi one. I remember watching it in film school. I'm like, this is really good. This is really good for something they shot at night or whatever during,
Robert, well, on another podcast entirely, we'll venture when I finally moved back to LA at some point in my life, because it is like my second home, but I literally haven't been there since January.
You're not missing much.
But I mean, there's nowhere to go. So I tell people, like, rather just stay here at least.
Exactly.
Is this the history of underground Mexican cinema in general, and my love to be a part of that. That is where I wanted to Herzog the documentary kind of thing.
Oh, that would be. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's like I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of anything close to that. But I was lucky enough to go to. It was a screening of. It was Alex Cox's. So he showed Walker, his movie Walker, in 35, and then he showed a movie called Highway Patrolman which was incredible. And he was describing to us. He's like, I filmed it in this style that some of the Mexican cinema filmmakers that they use it where, and I might be butchering the description of it, but the whole scene is filmed in one take, but it's not a static shot. It has movement, but I mean, it was amazing. And he started telling us about all this Mexican cinema. We were just like, we don't know anything. We don't. So I remember thinking that would be a great documentary. I'd love to, know more about that. That'd be a great subject for sure. Yeah.
There are layers of it. I mean, essentially, my whole dichotomy would be I'd just be Benny from Bring Me the Head Alfredo Garcia, where I eventually just get buried with bullets at some point. Yeah. I mean, that movie is very weirdly spiritual to me because he has my name.
I know what happens in it, and it is horrific for me to admit. I have seen and love the Killer Elite ninja battles on warships. Have not seen Alfredo Garcia, and I'm embarrassed to say that because I was waiting for a buddy of mine to get a good print of it for me because he was like, "Oh, I can get you like some, I don't know, Blu-ray that was from overseas." Still haven't seen it, and somebody's like, "It's the ultimate Peckinpah movie." They're like, "It is him." Somebody's like, "It's him. It's him on film." That's what somebody was saying to me. I don't know if it's true or not, but I can't.
Well, there's always, I think, Battle of Cable Hogue is really more him.
Love Battle of Cable. It's such a sweet movie. I remember seeing Wild Bunch in the theater, just being like Wild Bunch still, and then I saw Ballad of Cable Hogue, and I'm like, how did the same guy make this? It's such a sweet movie. It's adorable.
Yeah. But then it's like, I think like that's how he dies though in the end too, like when he was on the ranch in Montana and stuff like that. Like to me, like there's a lot there that he kind of made his own, and it was like, in some ways I always say it's like when a big movie and a filmmaker that finally like this is their big feature, which was Wild Bunch after he had done Ride the High Country. Have you seen Ride the High Country?
No, it's really terrible. Somebody's like, they were like, start out with, I was like, should I start out with Major Dundee? And they're like, no, because that was like super heavily edited. They were like, start out with either Ride the High Country, or they said there's a really good TV movie that he did. I think it's called like Noon Country or Noon Wine or something.
Deadly
it was like
Companions
one of his. Yeah, but, okay. So no,
Deadly Companions is my only Peckinpah that I have not seen. So
I'll start there, and I'll meet you at the. But no, somebody was like, they're like, you should see Ride the High Country. It's essential. They're like, check it out. It's really
Ride the High Country is a great film if you know TV westerns. Like it's the movie.
That, cool.
Intersects because, and it's also before where the western itself, like all the goody John Wayne, like the white hat, black hat. That there is such this changeover to it where it's the gray hat, it's the it's just filled with everyone's a bad guy. There's someone who's right. There's somewhat righteousness with these two characters, and there's these moments that happen in the film that are just totally like we didn't know at the time, but like Peckinpah had been playing around with in Rifleman Wanted Dead Alive, where there's just I feel like this is something that if I was living in LA, I was like, all right, so Robert, let's I'll get you a steak and a whiskey. We're gonna watch. If you fall asleep on me, I guess I won't talk to you again.
No. There would be no. This.
So Sam Peckinpah is my favorite filmmaker of all time. Like, there's no like Jarmusch gets in there at times. Spike is in there. Catherine Bigelow's in there. But I mean, Kurosawa's there at times. Even Takeshi Kitano is in there.
Sure. But the way that you lit up when I mentioned the ninja battle on the warships, I was like, okay, this guy must be a massive Peckinpah. Because even Peckinpah fans that I talk to about that, they're like, don't talk about Killer Elite.
Not in my house. Wrong with Killer Elite. It's just kind of boring after like the second half. Like,
it's boring except for the ninja battle. I love the ninja battle. The beginning is cool.
The twist of in the beginning of him getting shot and him in like this recovery. It was actually my last of the Peckinpah movies I'd never saw. I only seen it maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, so you've seen stuff. So I've never seen like, somebody was like, have you seen like Osterman Weekend? I've never seen any of that stuff.
So weirdly enough, that was my first Peckinpah movie as a kid. I realized my microphone's in here the whole time. I hate microphones.
Was that always on HBO, Osterman? It seems like an HBO movie, like Osterman Weekend. Like, oh, look at you! You're zooming around. It's pretty cool.
No, it's a pet peeve of mine is that when you do interview shows that someone has the microphone in there, and I'm like, no, like people don't want to see you talking to a microphone. They want to.
I don't see your mic at all, man. You
Oh,
make the mic seem invisible.
It's snuck in. I think because I hit my table with like the Renegade tape, and I was like, God damn it, it's in the frame.
You always get riled up with that Renegade tape.
Like I actually like boom mics in movies and stuff.
Oh, me too. I love it. Yeah, just bring on the mics, man. Yeah.
So with Peckinpah stuff is so you've seen Wild Bunch, of course.
Oh yeah, theater. Oh god, it was the restored version. It was.
Have you had a chance to see it at the Egyptian?
Yes. Were you there? Did you see it at the Egyptian?
I've seen it at the Egyptian. Yeah.
I wonder if you were there when I was there. This was a couple of years ago.
Probably. They play it pretty frequently. Not the 70 millimeters so much, but
No, it wasn't the 7. I wish I saw. No, it was the 35. So you saw the 70. That's amazing.
Oh yeah,
Really
no,
cool.
I melted, and I love that balcony.
The balcony. The balcony.
So the thing is, I've never seen Bring Me the Head of Frederick Garcia in a theater. AMC, but you have to be like, I guess, you have to show the movies up there. Have you heard about this? The $99 rental.
Oh, so you can. So does that mean you can rent the theater and you can just?
But you have to show like Tenet or something that's current right now. My dream is to show it at the new. It was Cine Family for a long time, but New Beverly. But
totally.
would be that it's Bring the Head of Frederick Garcia, and then I always just say like it'd be the double feature. I don't know what the other double feature would be, but it would be Bring the Head of Frederick Garcia in a theater with an audience and see what happened. Thought about maybe Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, but then I think, is that too much to too many?
Oh my god, that's like a whole other podcast. I was trying to explain to somebody how that, and they were just like, Deer Hunter is not your favorite Cimino movie, and I'm like, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot all the way. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, it's
it's my favorite Eastwood film. Yeah, it's
it's funny you say that. I think it might be mine too, because I don't really consider the Leone movies Eastwood movies. Those are Leone movies, but as far as like just Eastwood movies, yeah, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot is like transcendent.
If you get into geekdom, because whatchamacallit, Eastwood only did technically three Italian cinema ones, and then but everyone else in those movies have like those are their careers, and Eastwood has 3 films, and then he has 2-3 homages like High Plains Drifter, which is amazing.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, like just straight up, and you know what? It's like why I love that film is that every time he does even the stupid chair shit, all these things, I look at Leonard Malone, I was like, this guy knew his sexuality so well.
He really did. The way that he moved, very subtle. And it's like, how many other actors would be that cool with Jeff Bridges being that awesome and potentially upstaging them? Which he never does. But
you know what with Jeff, right? What's going on right now?
I saw that today. It's so sad. Oh man, I actually
called out the Beyond Fest people because they were showing photos like he's gonna kick cancer, and it's just images of him in Thunderbolt, and I'm like, guys, you know what happens at the end of Thunderbolt, right? Don't show photos of that. Like that's like one of the most heart-wrenching endings,
That is, I remember seeing that. I was also kind of a kid. I'm like, this is sad. The only time I was as sad watching something from the 70s was it was the 60s, 60s or the 70s. There was a Monkees episode where Mike leaves the band. He just like quits. And it was the first time as a kid that I ever experienced loss because I never had a relative die. And that was one of the saddest moments of my life. And then I remember seeing Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, and I'm like, I feel just as sad. Brief Jeff Bridges side note. I was lucky enough to, because we were talking about Freakin' before, Karin Kusama introduced To Live and Die in LA, and they showed it at Egyptian. This was when Destroyer was out, which I still want to see. I have not seen. I love The Invitation, but I haven't seen a Destroyer. But so they showed To Live and Die in LA. Great, fucking great. It was sold out. The curtains open right as Wang Chung was playing, which is how every curtain opening should go. The double bill was Cutter's Way with Bridges. Now, here's the crazier part. They screened a print of it that was the earlier title, Cutter and Bone. And the movie was the same, but it was whatever the test screening version was, and I turned to my buddy and I was like, "We will never see this again." Like, I mean, get ready to be depressed and stuff because this movie's awesome and depressing and great. But Bridges really seems to have kind of a cool streak of doing some pretty depressing ending movies. I got to say, he's
I need to finish. I've never been able to. I've loved it every time I started watching it. Rancho Deluxe. I've never finished it.
Okay, so I still want to see that, and I still want to see. Didn't he Against All Odds? I think it was supposed to be another good one.
Yeah, that's another one I had not seen, but that's like in that. I think isn't is James Woods in that one too?
Or I think there's another subgenre, really good kind of Woods being in the background type movies. I remember watching the follow up that Yates made to Breaking Away, which is called Eyewitness, which is a janitor detective movie starring William Hurt
and Sigourney
Weaver. And it's a weird movie, but Woods is just kind of in the background being squirrely. It's kind of awesome. It's
I mean, we're going off on another thing with Woods. Fast Walking. Have you seen Fast Walking or Cop, the James B. Harris film he made?
Cop has maybe, I was just saying this to somebody, one of my top 3 endings of all time. It's straight out of McBain from The Simpsons. That ending
he's total abcab. Like, it's great. Like, the movie's unapologetic in that sense, where he's a bastard. Like, this is what the movie.
He's a complete bastard. And I remember I was watching it with the same editor friend, and he telegraphed the ending as we were watching it. He's like, "'Cause I'm on suspension." Boom, just blows him away.
Well, the end, it's very Dirty Harry, but it's what the ending for me has always meant is that it's like all I know is this one thing is I know how to kill people and I know how to do it good. Yeah. That's what it says to me. It's like, because RoboCop's opposite of that. Like, RoboCop is like, can we have a police society where there is like technology, human beings, and stuff like that? It's that big Frankenstein question, really.
And I've always wondered. I've always wanted to. There's a really great. I think it's called Last Action Heroes. There's a really great doc. I think it's on Amazon now. About 80s.
In Search of Darkness, I think, did those.
It's 2.5 hours. You'll dive into it. You'll feel great. And the thing that I love about Verhoeven is like, he seems to completely admit and never denies it that it's his best American movie. He never seems to get sick of talking about it, even though I'm sure he'd rather talk about like Soldier of Orange or Fourth Man or any of his Dutch movies, which are incredible. But like, he's never a dick. He's like, dude, people just love RoboCop, and they should, because it's amazing. And and I mean, it's like he's made some great movies. And dude, Starship Troopers is a freaking masterpiece. But that's another thing that I need to go into, the older Verhoeven movies. I've never seen Spetters.
I've never seen all of Spetters. I've seen pieces of it, and it's always been around. I just always put it on. I'm like, oh, I need to watch this. Same with Turkish Delight. I've not seen.
Same with Turkish Delight's supposed to be like his that, and like I think like Fourth Man is supposed to be really good. I've only seen Soldier of Orange, and Soldier of Orange is. Have you seen Soldier of Orange with?
I've not. It was always in this one of our out of print VHS cases at Amoeba.
Yes, it's that's how I saw it, as like a crappy faded VHS, and it's great because it's like a World War II espionage movie that literally has a, because it's Verhoeven. Of course, it has to have a scene where they are torturing a guy with. The only thing that I can think of is they've shoved pipes up his ass that shock him. I don't know what it is, but it's Verhoeven. So, of course, it can't just be like a James Bond thing. It has to be.
Well, he's in this weird era. I know that it's something that it's something if he didn't know his work and he just jumped into Showgirls, you're like, oh, like, no, this is pretty tame, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
He's very fixated on penetration and what have you, which is weird because he's also obsessed with Christ, which is his other talking point. So,
yes.
But have you seen Flesh Plus Blood, or Flesh and Blood?
Oh, okay. So that's another one rented on VHS about 20 years ago, and I was a kid. We had something else that what I think we had, like To Live and Die in Hell, that we couldn't wait to watch. No, I'm sorry. We couldn't wait to watch Cross of Iron. So we liked Flesh and Blood, but we only got about an hour in, and I was like, this is really cool. Could we just watch Cross of Iron? Because I want to see Cross of Iron. And then we're like, holy shit, Cross of Iron is amazing. But should I revisit Flesh and Blood? Because it sounds like it is worth it.
So it ties back to Peckinpah. When I saw it originally, I was like, oh, okay, like this is a medieval film. Like, I didn't think much of it. But then I saw it a couple years ago after watching Game of Thrones, and then also going into my full-on, phase of like Jim Jarmusch was like the director I wanted to be in high school. I
Oh
loved
yeah,
Dead Man.
everybody wanted to be him, right? I mean, everybody who was cool wanted because he's a
Well,
great director, man. He's still great. Yeah.
Strangers in Paradise is like the ultimate, like if you can make that formula but make it your own voice, then it's the perfect indie film to make.
Oh,
Like,
totally. But
don't do him like because even he did himself in Dead Don't Die, and it's like those are the worst parts.
He is kind of doing himself. For me, it was either Night on Earth or Mystery Train because I saw those first. But I connected.
Train were always on IFC channel as a kid, as a teenager. I was just like entranced. Down by Law.
Yeah, God, Down by Law. Oh man, yeah.
I wanted to be part of the Sons of Lee Marvin. So.
What a cool organization! And I was like, dude, Ghost Dog should have been. There should have been 5 Ghost Dog movies. Like I was so.
There might be a sequel that's gonna happen soon.
Really?
I've heard that he's like, because he's like one of the few guys still gets like he can still get funding for features. He's not like going the route of Waters doing performance art or narrate or Lynch where he gets money from like Showtime to do Twin Peaks or something. But
it's really funny how Jarmusch has not jumped into. You would think that somebody would have offered him like a 10 episode streaming. I would watch a Jarmusch. I would watch a Jarmusch series just to see if he fucked with people to the extent that he did with Limits of Control, where he made his most Jarmuschian, glacial.
That's the turning point for me, where I was like, I think we're seeing other people at this point. Like I like the movie. I think it's very special, but I've never been able to finish Only Lovers Left Alive. I've never seen Patterson. It's like there was like this moment of like, I like you in this image. I like who you are, but I don't get. I don't get it.
No, I haven't seen anything after Limits of Control. I will admit that I saw Limits of Control at the Angelica in New York, which is this really cool theater because it's underground, so you hear the subways going by. And I remember turning to my roommate, and she's like, "That wasn't like Broken Flowers." I'm like, "No, that was him being defiantly Jim Jarmusch." That was like
Broken Flowers. Actually, there are times I think it's a great Murray performance. But
I love Broken Flowers. But
it's almost too catered to him because you're coming off of Lost in Translation, where it's like,
oh yeah,
it's like it's almost like it's like, oh, if you were a fan of The Razor's Edge growing up, like, oh yeah, I love Bill Murray or Larger Than Life and things like that. It's like, but then
I like Razor's Edge actually.
I think it's a great adaptation that it has its flaws. I think it's a great book that.
Yeah, it's got its flaws, but it was the movie that reminded me because when I saw Straight Time, which is like easily top 10 movie, Straight Time, love Straight Time, I kind of fell in love with Teresa Russell. And I saw Razor's Edge, and I'm like, yep, the love affair with Teresa Russell is continuing. What's his face? Nick Rogue he made a wife out of her, man. He was what a cool dude. He made
Bad
Man
Timing.
Who Fell to Earth. What's that?
Have you seen Bad Timing?
Someone who was a huge I think he does commentaries and stuff. Howard Berger, not the K&B Howard Berger, but he's a different Howard Berger. He was posting Bad Timing, and he's like, you got to see Bad Timing, man. It's
I have not seen Bad Timing all the way through but I've seen it. I feel like I've seen a lot of it through Z Channel highlights that movie quite a bit.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah.
It just scares me because it's like yeah, that's pretty much a relationship right there. Was with you and your and then I just also want to look at Art Garfunkel for 2 hours. But
I don't think Art Garfunkel wants to look at her.
The Teresa Russell obsession is within me, and that is because mainly from The Razor's Edge. Also, Straight Time. I actually did not see that movie until after I read No Beasts, No Fears.
My brother read the book, and he's just like he's like, yeah, I read this awesome book, and I'm like, I think I saw the movie that was and it's just so crazy to think that nobody cared. It came out and just came and went. I'm like, that's not fair.
Like there's Eddie Bunker adaptations. Like you get Animal Factory, like these
love Animal Factory. Yeah.
That just kind of go on the way. Dog Eat Dog, just sort of like like Dog Eat Dog is like one of my like heartbreak stories of that was sort of the beginning for me of like, I think I'm gonna step away because I tried with a friend to get the rights for that. That was like my first like, okay, I'm gonna try to have something, and I think we got some. I think there's a book that no one had we checked in, no one had the rights yet to it. Bunker had, we were like, oh, here's a silver lining, and then my buddy just sort of was like, we'd read it, and he was like, yeah, like he was gonna bring it because he was, this he was a black stand-up comic who wanted to do more serious writing, and there was me,
Oh.
the kind of the sycophant Tarantino type film college kid. And we were like, hey, let's do it together. We lived together. We tried to like write it out, find a producer, but we're like, they told us essentially like his publicist was like, it doesn't matter like about the money rights. We just want to see your pitch. And so
interesting.
it's one of those like Hollywood heartbreak stories where then, I was, we were trying to get together and I was like, well, should I just do it on my own? But I'm like, no, I want to do it with him. And then, of course, it went by the wayside. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's a possibility to get it back. It's in like one of my short films too, where the book is hanging out. And
oh, that's cool. You know what though? I don't think that would be one where if you remade it at some point, it's not like, I mean, Schrader made a very Schrader movie, which is awesome. But I mean, I think
did an amazing adaptation because have you seen it? Actually,
I have. I dug it a lot. I thought it was. I was shocked that he made a movie that crazy, like this late in his life. I mean, it's totally nuts. Yeah, I like it a lot.
I was gonna add more with them as young kids in juvenile hall. That was the big thing. It's from the book. That's
on. So there is more stuff of them as kids. Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
But he made a right decision, which is because you get the opening, passage is them. It's this prologue. They're all locked up in, and I'm blanking on the Nick Cage character in the movie. He's a teenager. He's getting out of juvie. But that's how they met, the three of them. And but he pissed off another kid, and that kid's is gonna shank him. And then the Defoe character, Mad Dog, he jumps in and saves him from not getting thrown in the hole and not getting released. So that's the whole dynamic. And then Diesel, who is not the character, that's the one thing I have with the Schrader film is like he's like this Chris Pratt kind of character before before he was, Guardians of the Galaxy Chris Pratt. Like I always thought like this is the Chris Pratt. I mean, he's like this family man who's this total like working for like his character got really taken out of. But that and the kid stuff I would have added quite a bit in there. But what I really admired is that he, like Schrader out the gate, did the killing the kid and the mom scene.
That was like, nuts.
Because that's about like 10. It's about like, I don't know if it's the second chapter or the third chapter in the book. So it doesn't start out with that. That's later.
The fact that it kicks off with that was like, so would you have had that? You would have had that happen.
I would have that happen a little later.
Right.
I felt like the dynamic of these characters as kids and then as adults was really what the story was, because it's kind of based off Bunker's own life as being.
So here's a sub question, because I was getting into an argument with somebody about this. Once Upon a Time in America. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think that would have been a better film? Because I've had talks with people about this where they're just like, it's like Full Metal Jacket syndrome, where they're like, the movie as a whole is really good, but they're like, I love the stuff with them as kids even more than all the stuff with them as adults. If you had the power to go back and make Once Upon a Time in America just as, interesting and nonlinear as it is, but just make it about them as kids, like that whole, would you have done, or are you just like, nope, it's perfect the way that it is? I haven't seen it for years. I remember thinking, this is the craziest movie. I mean, I really loved it. It's like this fairy tale mafia movie. I mean, it's great, but
it's probably, if I was to die tomorrow and someone said, hey, what's the movie you want to watch before you die? It'd be that film.
So that's so yeah. So you wouldn't change it, because I have this one buddy who's.
This is what I would say. How much time do I have? Because I want to see every version available. Because here's the story. Again, this is a movie that I read. My dad. I'll just say my dad wasn't in my life that much. We're actually okay friends now. But
that's good. Yeah.
He has his ways, but he gave me a book to interact with me because he knew I love movies, but he didn't understand why I love movies that much, and kind of shitted on me quite a bit growing up when we had time. But for my birthday one year, and it's also my birthday's in December, so it's like Christmas birthday together.
Which is the ultimate fucking ripoff, because they just combine presents. Yeah,
I'm literally 12 days before Christmas, so it's like he cheaped that but he got me this gigantic Roger Ebert book
Oh, very
of all
cool.
great of that used to come out every year. But this one was like the last where he was like, it was a mix of movies that he'd written from the 70s to to the most recent. The year after they had like, I think it was just so the films he had reviewed for the last few years or something.
But this went all the way back to like,
Yeah, this one had like, they had a bunch of 70s stuff in there, but he reviewed the two versions that everyone talks about with Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh, so he because the butchered one, which I think didn't they gave like thumbs down to, right? They were
Oh,
like, this
everyone
is
did, and as my favorite James Woods line, I always will say is like, it's interesting what you can do a little bit of editing, huh? And because and then on top of that then he says also it's in Z Channel, but he's like they like Warner Brothers, because no one understood why they cut it down, because it was a hit in Cannes. It was just that what I've been told kind of thing over the years is that sometimes like Leone wasn't happy with that version. He actually wanted it to be longer, but then they're like, you can't make it longer. We got to make it shorter, if anything. And he's like, well, and then of course he doesn't, no, everyone thinks a director owns their own movie. No director does.
right.
But,
Except Jim, yeah.
And I think that what happened was he just essentially just kind of raised up his hands, as like, whatever, I want to make my movie the way it is, kind of like that, Leone, because he. So, anyways, long story short, that I read that he reviewed them twice. One was 1 star, one was 4 stars. One was the worst movie of all, one ever made, one of the best movies of all time. But I've never been able to get a hold of this butchered version, which I've heard stories of. It's like this weird fever dream that is way more violent too. Like they added more violence to it. Like people are getting like machine gunned down.
Wow,
more. I've heard just so many weird stories about it, but it's not available anywhere.
So I think this would be a really interesting double bill because they have the same producer. Would be the butchered version of Once Upon a Time in America and the butchered version of Brazil that was shown with the happy ending. Because I swear to God, I remember seeing this because I was reading the Battle of Brazil, the book about Gilliam fighting with the studio, and it's so inspiring because he just didn't give up. He went the opposite of Leone. He's like, fuck you, we this is coming out, and it's not going to be the happy ending version. I remember seeing on TV the WPI. So there was a station, the channel 11 on the East Coast was WPIX, and they actually showed like a lot of canon films and stuff. It was like a lot of genre stuff. I remember seeing the commercial for the happy ending version of Brazil. And as a kid, I was like, wow, that looks really fun, which I think was the whole point. Like, we're going to take this movie about a totalitarian society that takes place now, not in the future, and sell it as a love conquers all version. And I don't even know. I think you can easily get a copy of that I think it's on the Blu-ray, but it would be kind of cool to like just watch like a double screening of, because they're both produced by Arna Milchan or something.
Arnold Milchan. Yeah, and it's like so it's that movie, and then also 1900 is the other one with De Niro. The two De Niro films that he made that are pure Italian production, but
and King of Comedy I think he produced too, right? Which thank God came out the way that it did. Like
it's Scorsese's like got Tarantino luck, where it's like he's maybe you debate which one's your favorite and stuff like that, but like he's not had his movie taken away from him at the end of the day. Anything like that. But yeah, I think when in America, it's like it's weird because I've seen the longer versions that have come out, and that I have the Blu-ray that has the extended cut.
I still haven't seen the longest. I want to see the longest one. I'm super curious about it. I still haven't seen that. I
think I saw it at Cinefamily. They had a run for about 2 weeks of it one Christmas, and I remember going to see it twice there, and I believe that was the longer version. I just couldn't remember. I was like, I don't. How long the movie is like, but I've seen
which length is it? Yeah, it's like
well, it's interesting because the movie, because it's like an opiotic dream. He's on opium and he's dreaming. It's like that's the movie. I didn't even realize what it was. Why the ending took me by surprise. It's like, what is that? Like, what is this about? I was 11 or 12 years old at the time, and I just never.
It's such a Wizard of Oz ending. You're like, oh, so all of this is an unrolliable narrator.
Well, I was
just
like,
all just be completely nuts.
Stoned, and then that was it. I was like, no. And then as I got older and read more, it was like, oh no, it's like it's all this drug memory. It's like, so it's like, and I'm like, So getting back to that question you had, getting back to that question
so
you had,
cool.
is yeah, like of course you want to see the kids version, but you can see that in The Wire season 4. You can see that in other movies. I think what Leone was trying to get was is I think not just it's the passage of time. It's I think he also wanted to distance himself from the Western. It's the only Western he was able to non-Western at the end. It's interesting. Like this little Dynamite Ducky Sucker wasn't supposed to be his movie. It was supposed to be Peckinpah, and
which is, and I was like, I like Ducky Star. I think it's like a fun kind of epilogue to all of his.
Good ride.
Yeah.
But it's not Leone's movie. He didn't want, like, he produced it, like he set it up, but it was like Peter Jackson coming to do The Hobbit after Guillermo was like, I gotta go do something else. It's taking too long, kind of thing. And
yeah, no, that's a great way of describing it, where he's just like, whatever, and he just does it. Yeah, it's like, it would have been interesting to see him do more. I remember reading somewhere that like he was offered like Mandrake the Magician or the Phantom, like something crazy like that. And it's like
probably, yeah,
that would have been. I was actually just reading that. I think there's a book coming out about it. There was almost a Nicholas Rogue Flash Gordon movie. We almost got that, and they were just
Mike Lee directed, not Mike Lee,
Hodges.
Mike Hodges. Why would I disrespect the grave of Mike? Is Mike Hodges even alive still? No, I mean, I'm a Vince Carter fan. I think it's one of the greatest movies of British cinema.
Oh, it's fantastic. But I would like to see a Mike Lee Flash. It'd be a very austere Flash Gordon,
very working class. It might kind of look like Man of Steel.
You may have just described the Man of Steel aesthetic more brilliantly than anybody else. It's like a Mike Lee Flash Gordon movie. That's actually kind of amazing. You should like put that on a poster somewhere and just like.
I don't mean to disrespect Mike Lee, and I should see Topsy Turvy, but I always say, like, if I want to watch a Mike Lee movie, I'll just go to see a Ken Loach film instead.
Yeah, well described. Yes, I like that.
I like Ken Loach stuff is because Peter Mullen said it best. He's like, he doesn't do improv. He doesn't improv. Like these guys, they always say like, oh, they improv. No, we rehearse. We talk, as these characters. The thing is, what he does is then he gets like the waiter who's actually at the restaurant as a character, and then he just cues him to interrupt you at times when you have rehearsed the scene. That's the style they shoot in. It's like no, it's not like making it as we go. It's like no, like we work with the characters, we work on it, and then we rehearse, and then he gets like us in a very dramatic scene, and then like the plumber shows up, and it's not the plumber fixing the sink. It's like that's what they do. Like, and I was like, well,
right. His entire the aesthetic is like, well, it's funny because what you're talking about, it reminds me of. It was another just bizarre curio discovery, but this is much easier to find. It's actually on Amazon. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Apple Pie before.
No.
It's a God, I gotta look it up. I honestly can't even describe it. I mean, it's like it's a very made by Apple Pie film. It was, man, I have to. This is a link that I'll just have to say. Luckily, it is on Amazon. I'm gonna look it up. So it was made by sort of an underground New York filmmaker in the 70s. It starts out as the story of a gangster who talks directly to the camera, and then he flashes back to when he decided to swindle his parents out of several $100,000. Then he dresses up like something out of Phantom of the Paradise and goes to kill them, but it turns out to be a stage production, so he doesn't really kill them. It ends with a huge in the middle of New York City dancing scene that I think Fame ripped off.
Yeah, and that one. You said some other ones too, like Hot Tomorrow, the Martin Brest one. Like, I should take some.
That one, I think you can just grab off YouTube and just put onto a VHS, so it's so it'll make sense.
I really that would make sense. So yeah, send me. I should take the notes down. So what we're gonna do is this:
Apple Pie, Hot Tomorrows.
The next 10 to 15 minutes, if you want to do this. Let's talk about Lost Treasures of the Valley.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
I can at least cut this and flip it, and then we can have the ranting. No, Robert, this is what I live for. It's like but at the same time, we want to make our own movies and talk. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I love this format of podcasting, but at the same time, it's like when you're engaged with someone that you don't even know, but like you have this tape thing that rolls into it. And
dude, I hope you can get like 3 podcasts. This was awesome. This was so much fun.
It's gonna be. I just looked at the clock and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be.
This is the Once Upon a Time in America podcast.
Let's